The Speaker.
Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and that will promote the interests of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om al ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelela ilezwe letu na bantu balo. Musile ukulumbu kwepondo letu. Nkosi sikelela i-Afrika. Pina abantwana bayo. Kwekela inkokeli zayo. Yaniki uxolo i-Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. Please be seated. Before we proceed, honourable members, I would like to welcome all our guests in the gallery and the learners from Bayswater English School who are here today to observe the parliamentary sitting, as well as learners from Manenberg Primary School. Welcome to the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Honourable members, I want to make some comments about the logistical arrangements. Today's sitting shall be governed by the standing rules, and in instances where the rules cannot be applied, the ruling by the presiding officer is final. Honourable members, the quorum requirements for the sitting of the House are as provided for in the Constitution and the standing rules. The Sergeant at Arms will be recording members' attendance, and honourable members who are present in the chamber and via Microsoft Teams have all the privileges and immunities imparted by law. Honourable members, unless there's an indication of unanimous concurrence, voting will be confined to members present in the House and who are entitled to cast their votes in accordance with our standing rules. If a member is considered to be out of order by the presiding officer, that member will have their microphones muted and called to order. When an honourable member wishes to raise a point of order, such an honourable member may address the presiding officer as normal, but must mute his or her microphone when he or she has completed speaking. Honourable members, I kindly request that those who are not members of the House to observe the decorum of the House, and for this sitting, language interpreting services are available by using the devices at your disposal. Honourable members, I wish to remind you that no interjections are permitted during these hybrid sittings, and to this end, I wish to call or draw your attention to Rule 40 of our standing rules. The Secretary and Administration will ensure that there is a dedicated technical support at all times during the sitting. Honourable members, we will now proceed with the business of the House, and I recognise the Chief Whip, the Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, notwithstanding the provisions of Rule 20, Section 1, that deals with the sequence of proceedings, I wish to move that the subject of discussion receive precedence. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Chief Whip. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable members, we will now deal with the subject for discussion in the name of the Honourable D.W. Bryant as printed on the order paper, and I recognise the Honourable Bryant.
Honourable Speaker, the severe flooding that recently ravaged large parts of the Western Cape is a stark reminder that climate change is no longer a future concern. It is here, and it is affecting our communities, our infrastructure, our economy, and our way of life. Extreme weather events are becoming more frequent, more intense, and more destructive. The Western Cape is not alone in facing these challenges. The devastating floods in KwaZulu-Natal a few years ago showed the long-term consequences disasters can have on communities and infrastructure. In many parts of that province, the effects are still being felt today. The question before us is whether this government is prepared not only to respond when disaster strikes, but also to build resilience for the future. Before anything else, we extend our deepest condolences to the families and loved ones of the 11 people who tragically lost their lives during these storms. More than 103,000 residents across the province were affected, while approximately 13,350 structures in Cape Town alone were damaged, along with 104 schools. When disaster struck, this DA-led Western Cape government was prepared and able to respond swiftly and decisively. The Provincial Disaster Risk Management Centre was activated immediately, while municipal emergency operations centres were mobilised across affected regions. Provincial departments, municipalities, emergency services, and humanitarian partners worked together to coordinate relief efforts and ensure support reached communities as quickly as possible. Through these coordinated efforts, more than 651 people were rescued, while humanitarian organizations provided over 18,000 cooked meals, 3,000 blankets, and thousands of additional relief items to displaced residents. We also acknowledge the remarkable efforts of municipal officials, emergency personnel, volunteers, community organizations, faith-based groups, and residents who stepped forward to support those in need. The ability to coordinate so effectively across government, civil society, and humanitarian partners reflects years of investment in disaster preparedness under the leadership provided by Minister Bedell and his team. The Western Cape government also took the responsible decision to close schools where necessary in order to protect learners, teachers, and staff. And these decisions are never easy, but effective leadership requires the confidence to act when circumstances demand it, and we know that Minister Mania certainly has that confidence. Recovery remains ongoing, but important progress has already been made. Key transport routes, including the N1 and the Huguenot Tunnel, have reopened, while approximately 92% of affected areas have been reconnected to the electricity grid. Premier Alan Winde has maintained direct engagement with Eskom leadership to monitor restoration efforts and ensure accountability. Provincial ministers, municipal leaders, and disaster management teams have also been on the ground across affected communities, assessing damage and coordinating recovery efforts where they are needed most. Honourable Speaker, while emergency response is critical, resilience begins long before disaster strikes. As global attention shifts to other crises, we cannot lose sight of the growing threat posed by climate-related disasters. Recent years have demonstrated just how rapidly weather patterns are changing, bringing both extreme heat and severe flooding to our province. And that is why the Western Cape government continues to advance long-term resilience through the Western Cape 2050 Climate Resilience Programme and the 10-year Water Resilience Plan. These initiatives recognise that climate-resilient infrastructure, effective planning, and proactive disaster preparedness are essential in a changing climate. This work includes investment in stormwater systems, road and bridge maintenance, energy resilience, water security, informal settlement upgrading, and improved early warning systems. Importantly, the Western Cape government has identified 114 new roads and stormwater infrastructure projects for implementation between 2026 and 2029, supported by more than 314 million rand in municipal infrastructure grant funding. This builds on nearly 800 million rand invested in 144 roads and stormwater projects over the previous 5 years. The Western Cape has once again demonstrated the value of preparation, capable institutions, and good governance. And when disaster struck, this government responded quickly, coordinated effectively, and focused on supporting affected communities. That is the approach of the DA-led Western Cape government, building resilience, strengthening preparedness, and governing responsibly in the face of a changing climate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Brian. I now recognise the Leader of the Opposition, Honourable Syed.
Honourable Speaker, members, residents of the Western Cape, and our honoured guests, let me begin by extending the ANC's sincere condolences to every family who lost loved ones during the recent severe weather and flooding in our province. We express our solidarity with all communities, farmers, workers, learners, small businesses, and households who suffered damage, disruption, and hardship. We acknowledge all stakeholders who assisted during this difficult period, including the Gift of the Givers Foundation and the Western Province Cricket Association. The ANC also welcomes Education MEC's decision to close schools. This was a necessary decision to protect learners, educators, and school communities during dangerous weather conditions. But while we recognize the work done during the disaster, we must ask a more important question. What was done before the disaster? The Western Cape does not only have a weather problem, it has a political will problem, a planning problem, an accountability problem, and a climate governance problem. This debate cannot become only a discussion about storm damage and relief efforts. The real issue is whether the Western Cape government, led by Premier Windy, did enough to prepare this province before the rain came. The Premier cannot only appear after the floods, receive reports, issue statements, and speak about recovery. The Premier must lead before disaster happens. Climate change is real. Extreme weather events are becoming more frequent, but climate change cannot become an excuse for weak planning, poor coordination, or vulnerable communities flooding repeatedly. When informal settlements floods, roads collapse, bridges are damaged, farms are cut off, infrastructure fails, and learners cannot get to school, that is not only a natural disaster, it also is a governance failure. Disasters expose inequality. That is why disaster resilience must be measured from the ground, not from press conferences or from boardrooms. We are heading towards the local government elections on the 4th of November, and the people of this province are watching closely. They are watching whether government only arrives after disaster or whether government plans before disaster. The lived reality of communities such as Tembaletu, Lavaikamp, Bakalsdorp, and Rosemoor is that too often they are remembered only when there is a crisis. These communities deserve more than visits after floods. They deserve prevention, infrastructure, drainage, safe roads, housing, and proper disaster risk planning. These are the communities under the DA-led George municipality. The people of these communities have every right to ask why they remain vulnerable year after year. The DA cannot expect the support of communities it neglects when long-term planning, maintenance, and infrastructure investment are required. On 4th November, the people of George and the Western Cape will have an opportunity to hold the DA accountable at the ballot box. Communities must use their vote to demand a government that sees them, plans for them, and protects them before disaster strikes. At the same time, notwithstanding the valid criticism of Neisner, the ANC commends the ANC-led municipality and the newly appointed acting municipal manager, Mr. Ngubo, as well, for the proactive approach that it has taken towards the inclement weather. This is the type of local government leadership our communities need. Leadership that prepares, communicates, coordinates, and acts before people are left to suffer, in spite of the critiques, and the mistakes. Speaker, the Western Cape government has disaster management policies and structures, but are they up to date, relevant, and applied in the lived reality of our people? A policy on paper does not protect the family from flooding. A framework that is not implemented does not repair a bridge. A plan without political leadership does not save a vulnerable community. And we will not ask the Premier for accountability because we will get excuses. We know he will praise DA governance while communities flood every winter. The truth is simple. People do not choose unsafe living conditions. They are there because this government has failed to provide adequate housing, services and dignity. The Western Cape Constitution provides for a Commissioner for the Environment. This is not a decorative aspect. It is not a nice to have. It is a constitutional accountability mechanism. A Commissioner for the Environment can strengthen oversight over climate resilience, disaster risk reduction, and impact of government decisions on vulnerable communities. But after years of DA governance, there is still no meaningful political will to give effect to this mechanism. Instead of implementing the provision, the DA wishes to seek this House's support to remove the provision for a Commissioner of the Environment from the Western Cape Constitution. The Premier cannot claim to lead a climate resilient province while his government seeks to remove a constitutional mechanism designed to strengthen environmental accountability. The ANC supports coordinated disaster recovery and assistance to affected communities, farmers, workers, and municipalities, but we reject disaster politics without disaster justice. Relief parcels are necessary, but they are not resilience. Emergency response is necessary, but it is not prevention. People of this province deserve a government that prepares before the rain, protects the vulnerable during the rain, and accounts honestly after the rain. The Western Cape does not only need disaster response, it needs disaster justice. I thank you.
Thank you very Order. Thank you very much to the Leader of the Opposition. Order. I now recognize the Honorable Adams. Do you need the podium? Order, members, there's a member on the floor. Order. Honorable
Madam
Adams, you may
Speaker.
continue.
Honorable members, if the Premier can please pay attention. Premier, ek het gisteraand was ek in George gewees. In my tuisdorp waar ek bly in Cornwall. Baie mense het foto's gestuur oor hoe die water in hulle huise invloei. Kniediepte, Premier. Dit is nie 'n grap nie. Ons mense sit in sukkel van die laaste storm waarvoor die DEA sê hulle prepared was. Die slegte DEA was nie prepared nie. Die mense sit met dakke wat in mekaar inval. En ja, Chief Hoop, die mense sit in wag vir Gamplas wat tot vandag toe kom, wat hulle verlede maand al aansoek gedoen het. Jy kan jou gesig maar trek. Die ou mense word gevra. Honorable Speaker, I
Honorable
apologize.
Adams,
I
please.
apologize. I apologize.
Please take your seat. Honorable Walters, there's a, is there a point of order?
Twice now, the honourable member referred to the Premier and to Member Philander directly. Must please direct it through you as the Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable Adams, just a reminder that you must please speak to me or
Honorable
through
Speaker,
me.
I did apologize to you. So honorable member must pay attention.
Thank you.
Speaker,
Order. Order, members, there's a member on the floor.
Speaker, my time must still be
No,
paused.
yeah, no, your time is still paused. Order, members. Honorable Adams, you may continue.
Dankie, Speaker. Speaker, daar word van bejaarde mense verwag om van Mareekamp af, van Cornwall af, van Rosemont af, van Pakkesdorp af na Tembale toe te gaan vir sandsakke wat hulle uit hulle eie laaste sentjies moet gaan koop om hoe die sandsakke in Tembale toe of in Pakkesdorp te gaan kry of by George Brandweer om dit self vol te maak en dan dit weer by hulle huise te kry. Die slegte DEA verwag dit vir ons mense, maar verkiesingstyd kom haal daai einste mense, ons mense by hulle huise en kom klop hulle wakker en trek hulle DEA T-shirts aan en trek ANC en EFF en ander T-shirts uit om te sê kom vote vir ons. Maar gister en vandag sit ons mense in huil, hulle het nie sandsakke nie, hulle het nie gamplas nie, hulle het nie emergency behuising nie, want die DEA is nie prepared nie. Die vloede gaan weer kom en dit gaan weer die DEA om kan vang. Dit is tyd, Speaker, dat die DEA moet besef dat ons mense is net so belangrik soos die mense wat aan die ander kant van die brug bly. Die bome by ons mense in die strate lê nog net so. Dit is nie opgetel nie. Die EPWP en CPWP en alle werkers wat die munisipaliteit kan kry, moet gaan in die dorp en die huise gaan optel, die bome gaan optel by hulle kante. As jy in Peddie-Miller-straat bly, ry in Cornwall waar ek bly, daar lê 3 bome in die straat, langs die sypaadjie nog altyd. Ek hoop die honorable Meyer skenk aandag aan dit. As jy in Pakkesdorp gaan, as jy in Rosemore gaan, die mense moes hulle eie geld gebruik het om die bome van die sypaadjies af, wat die munisipaliteit se verantwoordelik is, te verwyder. Ek het met 'n ou oom gepraat, 'n bejaarde oom in Convent Garden in Georgian, en hy het gehuil, hy's 'n DA-voter. Ek het hom ongelukkig by die DA, en ek kan hom weer haal om weg te kom van die DA. Hy het gehuil en vir my gevra, Stamhoof, hoe los die mense ons dan nou? Ek moet my eie boom moet ek loop optel hierso en betaal vir mense om af te saag terwyl die munisipaliteit missing is. Die 4de November voor die Here Speaker moet aankom, sodat ons mense kan dit waar hulle nou deurgaan, wyse besluite kan doen op die 4de November. Ek saluut vir jou Speaker, Premier met die pink kouse, honorable through you Speaker, to my Premier with pink socks.
Honorable Adams, your time has expired. Please take your seat. Order. Order, members. I now recognize the Honorable Masipa. Order, members. There's a member on the floor. Honorable Masipa, you may continue.
Honorable Speaker, our recent oversight visit confirmed what many farmers, farm workers, and rural communities already know. These floods were both a humanitarian crisis and economic disaster. Entire communities were disrupted. Infrastructure was damaged, agricultural production was severely affected, and livelihoods were placed at risk. The reality is that the weather conditions was on a scale rarely seen in living memory. Climate change is no longer a future threat, it is a present reality. I want to commend the Western Cape government led by Premier Alan Winde for its rapid response and their engagement directly with the affected communities. We also witnessed extraordinary acts of leadership from local businesses and community members who stepped forward to assist displaced farm workers and households when help was needed most. Their efforts remind us that disaster response cannot be left to government alone. The whole of society approach demonstrated the resilience and compassion that define the people of this province. However, while emergency relief is essential, the real question before this House is, will farmers be able to recover, survive, workers retain their jobs? South Africa lacks an effective agricultural climate risk insurance system or government protection of its country's biological assets. The climate risks are so big that private insurance products are either prohibitively expensive and unavailable. As a result, farmers are left exposed and agricultural production.
Honorable Masipa, please take your seat. Honorable Masipa, please take your seat. Honorable members, is there a point of order?
I want to establish.
Honorable member, is there a point of order?
The member prepared to take a question.
Oh, so do you want to ask the member a question?
Yes, Speaker. I'm asking the member through you.
Okay, let me ask the member if he's prepared to take a question. Honorable Masipa, are you prepared to take a question?
Can you allow me to just finish my speech, and once I'm done, he can ask the question.
So the honorable member at this stage is not prepared to take a question. Honorable Masipa, please take your seat. Honorable member, is that a new point of order?
I hear you, Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, honorable member. Honorable Masipa, you may continue.
Honorable Speaker, as a result, farmers are left exposed. Agricultural production remains vulnerable. This is not sustainable. South Africa must move from disaster response to disaster preparedness. SA must first establish a first loss agricultural insurance program supported by government and administered through a dedicated institutional mechanism similar to SASRIA, or a total government collateral for farmers to help them access funding from commercial banks. This is not a new idea, Honorable Speaker. In 2019, The South African Insurance Association proposed a heavily subsidized multi-peril crop insurance model for commercial farmers alongside index-based insurance products for developing farmers. This included an area yield insurance, pasture drought insurance for livestock producers, and weather index insurance products. Government absorbs a portion of the catastrophic risk.
Honorable Masipa, please take your seat. Honorable Member, is there a point of order?
Thank you very much, Speaker. Can you ask the member to read his speech slowly so that the public can be able to follow?
Honorable
He's
Member.
currently rapping.
Honorable Member, that is not a point of order. And also I wish to remind the honorable members that frivolous points of orders are not parliamentary. Honorable Masipa, my apologies, you may continue.
Honorable Speaker, government absorbed a portion of the catastrophic risk, thereby enabling private insurers to participate in making insurance affordable for farmers. Unfortunately, progress has been painfully slow. In 2021, Santam piloted a soil moisture index insurance product within a regulated fintech environment. Despite the innovation, uptake remained low because affordability challenges persisted. Similarly, Land Bank Insurance is currently piloting area yield and pasture drought products, yet this remain limited in scale and reach. The challenge is the absence of coordinated national framework that can bring together government, insurers, farmers, and financial institutions. National Treasury, the government, the Department of Agriculture and COGTA must urgently engage on establishment of climate risk insurance mechanism or government guarantees for agricultural post-climate disaster. Such a mechanism should have three key objectives. One, it must provide rapid claims processing, payouts, and loan disbursements. Secondly, it must cover first loss risk associated with the climate disaster. And thirdly, it must crowd in private sector participation by reducing catastrophic risk exposure and creating a viable agricultural sector. The DA further believes that agricultural disaster risk funding must be reviewed to ensure that Department of Agriculture is empowered with greater authority to manage agricultural disaster response directly. It requires specialized responses that are often distinct from broader disaster management interventions. Land Bank, SASRIA, and or a newly established independent entity must administer such a program. Previous proposals to house the program within Land Bank faced industry resistance due to concerns about market advantage. Honorable Speaker, if national government of the ANC fails, the Western Cape must take the lead and create conditions for resilience, investment, and recovery. That means leveraging international climate finance and establishing a sustainable agricultural insurance framework that protects both farmers and farm workers. We have a capable finance minister whom we believe will do that. Let's build a farming sector that is resilient, competitive, and capable of withstanding changing climate change. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable Masipa, please take your seat. Honorable Michaels, do you need the podium? Order, members. Order. Order, there's a member on the floor, members.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, the recent severe flooding that devastated our province has once again exposed a painful truth. The Western Cape government under the Democratic Alliance is incapable of protecting the poor, incapable of building resilient infrastructure, and incapable of governing beyond press conference and photo op flyovers. Over the past month, communities from the Cape Winelands to the West Coast and Overberg have endured catastrophic damage. Reports confirm rainfall of up to 200 millimeters, winds exceeding 120 kilometers per hour, widespread road failures, collapsed bridges, and thousands left out with electricity or shelter. Tens of thousands rely on humanitarian relief because the provincial government failed to invest in long-term resilience despite years of warnings. The agriculture sector, livelihood of rural colored communities, has been shattered. vineyards, orchards, croplands, and entire apple harvests in Grabouw and Elgin were wiped out, with farms cut off due to destroyed access roads and bridges. Power outages crippled irrigations and packed houses, threatening export chains and livelihood. Yet the DA response has been to parade digital access apps and media briefings while farmers and farm workers sit out with no income, no transport, and no certainty. Honorable Speaker, the DA claims to be a government of excellence, but when disaster strikes, they rush to national government, cap in hand, begging for classification of a provincial disaster so that national funds can be bailed them out. This is not resilience. This is not leadership. This is dependency dressed up as competence.
Order.
The NCC has long warned the Western Cape
Honorable
government.
Michaels, your time has expired. Please take your
The
seat.
NCC has long warned
Or
that the
Honorable
Western
Michaels,
Cape
please
government
take your seat.
cameras.
Order. 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 Yes, honorable members, is there a point of order?
Thanks, Speaker. This could perhaps be a human error on your end. But with all fairness, I would like to ask you, Speaker, to go on Hansard on the basis that where one stand,
Order.
stop the
Order, there's a member on the floor.
when you stop the member, he still had some couple of seconds left.
Honorable member, I saw the time's up in front of me, but because you raised that, I will check with Hansard and I will revert back. The member, in fact, continued when I asked him to told him his time is up, which would have been captured on Hansard in any case. So the member was not disadvantaged at any point. Order, members. Honorable members, is that a new point of order?
Speaker, with what you are saying now, the last statement undermines your commitment to go on Hansard. You are already concluding that already the member had already finished speaking. Then there is a problem, Speaker.
No.
That one, you infringe his right to finish his speech in a proper manner.
I've already ruled. I've already ruled and committed to revert to Hansard. What I then said was that even if the member coming back from Hansard, the member had an additional time to conclude in any case. So the member would not have been disadvantaged because even if we rule next week on the Hansard, the debate would have been finished. So in the interest of protecting the member already had an opportunity to conclude in any case. With that being said, I've already ruled. I'm not taking any further points of orders on that point. Honorable Chief Whip of the Opposition, is that a new point of order?
Deputy Speaker, it's not a new point of order. I think just for the sake of justice, perhaps for advice moving forward, yes, the member won't get his time back, but our clock there showed 2 seconds. For you, it was something different. Perhaps I think you must conclude in a fashion to say that you will look at what is happening between that, because we are not seeing the same thing. Otherwise, saying that the time won't get your time back, it's not going to correct it. Humanly, it's incorrect. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you very much. I take the advice of the Chief Whip of the Opposition to check that the 2 clocks, the one from the table and the one on the screen, is in sync. With that being said, I recognize the Honorable Mare, who is on the virtual platform.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the situation faced by the farming community and the local community of McGregor serves as an important example of why disaster response mechanisms require urgent reconsideration. The McGregor Bridge was severely damaged with sections completely washed away. Consequences were immediate. School children could no longer get to school. Farmers were unable to transport their produce to the market. and the entire local community was disrupted, with many having to resort to traveling via Bonnievale to get to Robertson. That's almost an extra 65 kilometers. Now, the community expected emergency intervention that would happen immediately. Local residents, farmers, businesses were willing to assist and become involved in restoring access and repair to these roads within days. However, this could not happen because, Speaker, the normal procurement and contractor appointment process may work during routine maintenance and ordinary circumstances, but they become rigid obstacles during emergencies. When livelihoods are at risk or access routes are destroyed, when local communities are isolated, response mechanisms must be faster, more flexible, and focused on restoring normality as quick as possible. Now, children had to travel extra distances. Some even had to sleep over in halls during that period of time. And there are still families sitting without electricity. Speaker, while progress has since been made, the efforts are acknowledged. Responses was simply not good enough. Honourable Speaker, the Western Cape government must assess whether the current system is truly designed to respond to emergency situations. Because when a disaster strikes, communities need action, not long administrative delays and excuses.
Honourable member, your time has expired.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
I now recognize the Honourable Minister of Finance, Minister Baartman. Minister, do you need the podium? Then you may continue.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, residents of the Western Cape. Last week, I joined the Premier and members of our Cabinet to assess the damage caused by the floods that ravaged our province. While the scale of the damage was overwhelming, I was struck by the resilience of our communities. In Beketberg het ons 4 vroue ontmoet wat 'n sopkombuis begin het om warm maaltye aan hul gemeenskap te voorsien. In Malgas het lede van die boerderygemeenskap wat swaar geraak is gepraat oor hul vasberadenheid om aan te gaan ten spyte van hul verliese. In Vredendal het die hoofbrug wat die dorp verbind ernstige skade opgedoen. Tog het ons selfs daar 'n gemeenskap gevind wat nader aan mekaar gebring is ten spyte van die ontwrigting. Speaker, extreme weather events have unfortunately become our new normal. There is nothing any political party or government can do to prevent severe weather from becoming more frequent, more intense, or more disruptive. These are acts of God. What we can do is ensure that we are ready as a province and as communities to respond and to adapt. Assessments of the damage are still underway, but preliminary estimates already exceed 8 billion rand for public infrastructure and 10
Honourable Minister, please take your seat. Honourable members, is there a point of order?
Thanks, Speaker. I would like to establish from member for you whether she prepared to take a question.
Thank you very much. I'll ask the Minister. Minister, are you prepared to take a question?
No, thank you.
The Minister is not prepared to take a question. Honourable member. Honourable Minister, you may continue. Honourable members, is that a new point of order?
I'm rising to acknowledge your feedback from the member. Thank you very much.
Order. Honourable Walters, is that a new point of order?
The first time, I think it was quite humorous, but now it is becoming frivolous, what Member Quincy is doing.
Thank you very much,
Please
Honourable
make
member.
a ruling in that regard.
Honourable order, members. Order. Honourable Minister, please continue.
Preliminary estimates already exceed 8 billion rand for public infrastructure and 10 billion rand for the agriculture sector. Rebuilding will require significant resources, time, as well as patience. What we also know is that no single sphere of government can carry the financial burden of rebuilding alone. The recovery process will require every stakeholder in both public and private sectors to come to the table. South Africa must collectively mobilize finances to support rebuilding and recovery efforts. Natural disasters and extreme weather events affect every province. The infrastructure loss in a matter of days took years to build and cost billions of rands. The damage will inevitably set back infrastructure pipelines, in some cases by years. The provincial fiscus alone cannot meet the growing demand for infrastructure in the face of repeated disaster-related shocks. That is why the provincial treasury is strengthening our alternative and blended finance mechanisms, including work with the World Bank and National Treasury on a credit guarantee vehicle to de-risk private sector investment, and having established an alternative and blended finance reserve to support future infrastructure borrowings. Infrastructure investment is a critical part of climate resilience, and that is why when we build back, we will have to build back better. Toe ons Momsbury besoeke het die Swartland munisipaliteit aangedui dat hul dorpe grootendeels gespaar is van die ergste gevolge van die vloede. Dit was nie toevallig nie. Oor die afgelope paar jaar het hierdie munisipaliteit in kritieke infrastruktuur belê, insluitend stormwaterstelsels, om die impak van swaar reënval en oorstromings te verminder. Hierdie benadering moet in die hele provinsie standaardpraktyk word. Rebuilding after each disaster without changing how we build will simply recreate the same vulnerabilities. Speaker, we also need better early warning systems to save lives and reduce losses. And this calls for stronger investment from our national government in the South African Weather Services, so that alerts are accurate, timely, and accessible. We must also ensure that our systems act quickly. Just for the record, we don't use normal procurement procedures during a disaster. We have disaster, emergency, and crisis procurement. Despite this, we will review our disaster and emergency procurement processes again to enable even faster yet accountable decision-making processes during disasters. And we are exploring the role of self-insurance mechanisms and insurance-linked products, particularly in agriculture, where repeated climate shocks are placing farming communities under severe pressure. In the 2026 budget speech, I outlined a disciplined response to rising unforeseeable and unavoidable events. Over and above the 1.346 billion rand set aside in reserve over the MTEF, we allocated a further 949.8 million rand in this financial year for unforeseen and unavoidable events, including 177.9 million rand for water resilience and 452.5 million rand for energy resilience. But even with these additional allocations over and above the baselines of different departments, the scale and frequency of the disasters now exceed what any single public sector budget can absorb. No single government or stakeholder can fund the impact of disasters on our communities alone. It will require reprioritization as well as coordinated fiscal response across various spheres of government and the private sector. As Suid-Afrikaner speakers ken ons veerkragtigheid en saam sal ons herstel en herbou. Ek dank u.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I now recognize the Honourable Brinkhuis on the virtual platform.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. On behalf of Al Jamaa, we rise to address the devastating impact of the recent severe flooding across the Western Cape and the urgent need for a more coordinated human and climate resilient response. These floods have once again exposed a deep vulnerability within our province. Roads have collapsed, bridges have been damaged, electricity supply disrupted, and vital public infrastructure brought to a standstill. Communities have been cut off from essential services, while school, clinics, and homes have suffered immense destruction. For many farming communities, the flooding has destroyed crops, damaged livestock infrastructure, and disrupted food production and supply chains. The consequences extend beyond the agricultural sector. They threaten food security, employment, and the livelihoods of thousands of workers, particularly in rural areas. As always, it is the poor and vulnerable who suffer the greatest burden. Informal settlements situated near rivers, floodplains, and unstable land remain in the front line of climate disasters. Families who already face poverty, unemployment, and food insecurity are now forced to rebuild from nothing, often with limited support and delayed assistance. Speaker, climate change is no longer a distant warning. It is our lived reality. The increasing frequency and intensity of floods demand urgent action beyond temporary disaster relief. Al Jamaa calls for stronger investment in disaster preparedness through improved stormwater infrastructure, early warning systems, climate-smart urban planning, and the protection of vulnerable communities from high-risk settlement areas. We further call for enhanced coordination between provincial departments, municipalities, disaster management
Honourable
teams.
Member, your time has
NGOs.
expired.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Honourable
very
Speaker.
much. I recognize Honourable Christians on the virtual platform.
Thank you, Speaker. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, this debate should not be a party political debate. This debate should be to share condolences with those families who lost loved ones. And on behalf of the ACDP, I want to extend my sincere condolences to those families who lost brothers, sisters, aunts, and so on. But this debate should also be to appreciate those role players who bravely assisted those who was affected by the extreme weather conditions. And as the ACDP, we want to praise and compliment those who unselfishly assisted the most vulnerable communities. But also, Speaker, what is fundamental and what is important is this debate should be how do we move beyond an emergency response and embrace a proactive, integrated approach to reduce future risks. So this debate should be about sympathy, empathy, and what is the way forward. It's not a debate to point fingers. It's a debate to thank those who, communities, faith-based organizations, NGOs, who came and gave shelter to those who was left without any shelter. So, Speaker, I hope that out of this debate, we will have some substance. Because remember, the people of the Western Cape is watching, and they're looking at us as leaders and say, what are you debating? I hope that they can take something home and says, these people are debating a better life for us all. I thank you.
Honourable Member, your time has expired. For the members, I now recognize the Minister of Infrastructure, Minister Simmers, on the virtual platform.
Thank you very much. Honourable Speaker, Premier and Cabinet colleagues, members of this House, maar baie belangrik, die veerkragtige inwoners van ons Wes-Kaap. When floods strike, the first thing communities ask is not who is to blame. They ask, can I get home? Can my child get to school? Can emergency services reach us? Can my business survive another week? Can my produce reach the market? And this is why infrastructure matters. Roads are not simply lines on a map. They are the arteries of our economy. They connect people to opportunity, farmers to markets, patients to healthcare, and communities to one another. And when those arteries are cut off, entire communities can become isolated overnight. The recent severe storms and flooding have once again reminded us of reality we can no longer ignore. Climate resilience is no longer a future discussion. It is a present-day governance responsibility. But before we speak about roads, bridges, and engineering assessments, we must acknowledge that this disaster is ultimately about people. It is about families who found themselves cut off from essential services. It is about workers unable to reach the places of employment. It is about businesses, farmers, and communities trying to recover from circumstances beyond their control. And it is also about the extraordinary people who stepped forward when the province needed them most. So on behalf of this government, I want to express our sincere gratitude to our engineers, technicians, operators, contractors, disasters, management teams, municipal partners, frontline workers, and yes, active councillors who were on the ground. While floodwaters were still rising, teams were already mobilizing. While many residents were sheltering from the storm, our infrastructure personnel were working through the night to restore access and reconnect communities. Because during a disaster, every hour matters. Every reopened road matters. Every temporary bridge matters. Every restored route protects livelihoods and reconnects communities. Honourable Speaker, as a department, our immediate priority has remained very clear. Firstly, to restore safe access. implement temporary interventions where necessary thereafter, and undertake permanent reconstruction that improves resilience and reduces future risk. This systematic approach allows us to respond immediately while also preparing for the realities of tomorrow. Over recent weeks, residents across the Western Cape have followed our daily district-by-district infrastructure updates. Those updates were not merely reports. They were proof that their government was present, proof that progress was being made, and proof that communities were not being left behind. And we have already seen important progress. The Vredendal Bridge has reopened to control traffic ahead of schedule. At McGregor Bridge, a secure and certified pedestrian crossing has already been installed while major repair works continue toward restoring full access. Significant stabilization and clearing operations are progressing at the Kango Cape Road, Bainscove Plaas, and numerous other affected routes across our province. Across every district, teams continue assessing, repairing, and reopening strategic transport links. And while these interventions may appear technical, their impact is deeply human, as every route reopened strengthens community resilience. Honourable Speaker, important lessons from recent years is that recovery cannot simply mean rebuilding what existed before. Recovery must mean building back better, stronger, and smarter. A practical example already exists in our province. Following the devastating floods of 2024, the MR 310 outside Citrusdal was reconstructed using more resilient engineering standards. When this latest flood event struck, that upgraded infrastructure held. It withstood conditions that previously caused significant damage. That is not luck. That is resilience through planning, investment, and resilience through capable governance. Because climate adaptation is not an abstract theory. It is an engineering decision, a design standard. It is an infrastructure investment. And increasingly, it is the difference between recovery and repeated destruction. But resilience is not only about roads and bridges. It is also about people. Because when flooding strikes, it is almost always the most vulnerable communities that suffer first and recover last. Families living in informal settlements, communities located along floodplains, households with limited resources to absorb repeated shocks. For some residents, a flooded road is an inconvenience. For others, it means losing access to work, schools, clinics, and basic services. That is why disaster resilience cannot be separated from the broader work of upgrading informal settlements, improving stormwater systems, strengthening municipal infrastructure, and delivering safer, more sustainable human settlements. If we are serious about climate adaptation, then we must be equally serious about protecting vulnerable communities before disaster strikes, not only after disaster strikes. Honourable Speaker, these recurring disasters also force us to confront an important policy question. Are our current funding frameworks doing enough to support resilience before infrastructure fails? Too often, governments are funded to repair damages after disaster has occurred, rather than to prevent that damage in the first place. As a province, we have consistently argued that infrastructure maintenance, disaster mitigation, settlement upgrading, and climate adaptation should be recognized as investments in long-term resilience. The same principle applies to broader infrastructure grant reform. We must continue building funding models that reward readiness, planning, maintenance, and sustainability. Because every rand spent preventing disaster today saves many more rands in construction tomorrow. The choice before us is thus simple. Pay now to rebuild resilience or pay significantly more later to rebuild after failure. Honourable Speaker, the question before us is not whether climate-related disasters will happen again. The question is whether we are building a province capable of withstanding them. Every bridge we strengthen, every settlement we upgrade, every road we make more resilient, every infrastructure investment we make today. These are investments in the future Western Cape we want to leave to the next generation. I also want to make a direct appeal to the public. Please obey road closure signs. Please respect traffic management instructions. As water recedes, secondary dangers emerge, landslides, slope failures, undermined road surfaces, and structural weaknesses that are not immediately visible. Ignoring closures places both motorists and frontline workers at risk. Public cooperation remains one of our most important safety tools. Honourable Speaker, this debate is not only about floods. It's about preparedness. It's about resilience. It's about whether government plans for tomorrow instead of reacting only after disaster strikes. The Western Cape's response has been clear. We respond, coordinate, repair, and build. But most importantly, we improve. Our responsibility
Honourable
is to leave
Minister,
behind
your
a
time
province
has
that is
expired. Please.
safer, stronger,
Honourable
more
Minister,
connected,
your time has
and more
expired.
resilient. then
Honourable
be elected.
Minister,
And
your
that is exactly
time has
what we are doing.
expired.
Thank you, Speaker.
And Honourable Lecker, I recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, as we debate the impact of recent severe flooding on infrastructure, agriculture, energy system, and vulnerable communities in the Western Cape, we must do so in an honest and sincere manner. Speaker, people lost their lives here, and there are still families mourning. The floods left a trail of destruction across the province. Communities in the Garden Route, Cape Metro, Overberg, Winelands, and other regions experienced flooding, infrastructure damage, road closures, and disruption to essential services. Thousands of residents were affected, many losing homes, possessions, livelihoods, and access to basic services. In recent oversight visit to farms in Wesley area of the Witzenberg municipality led by Honorable Nkondlo, the devastating impact of this disaster was visible firsthand. What was particularly distressing was finding 6 families displaced by the disaster, living in a cold storage facility under extremely difficult conditions. Their circumstances underscore the vulnerability of farm worker communities. Speaker, we must admit climate change is here and we need to adapt. You adapt by putting the right measures in place to handle such storms and right people. Speaker, we have been telling the Premier and his MECs there is a need for an environmental commissioner. The Premier is the head provincial executive. He appoints the provincial cabinet. He sets the priorities of this government. He is responsible for ensuring that departments work together effectively. He is responsible for whether this government acts proactively or merely reacting when disaster strikes. Too often, the people of this province see government leaders appear after floods have devastated communities, after roads have collapsed, after homes have been washed away, and after livelihoods have been destroyed. We see the before and after pictures you are posting in your social media platform. Premier, can you kindly do the same with affected informal settlements? Premier, we know that you will not do such because you know the impact is felt differently based on the socio-economic factors in the province. The Western Cape Constitution provides for the establishment of an environmental commissioner. This is not a symbolic office. It is a constitutional accountability mechanism designed to strengthen environmental governance, monitor conservation efforts, assess climate resilience, promote disaster risk reduction, and evaluate long-term environmental consequences of government decisions. Yet, despite the increasing frequency of floods, droughts, fires, and extreme weather events, the DA-led provincial government has failed to give meaningful effect to this constitutional provision, and I ask why. Had there been the political will to establish and properly resource the environmental commissioner, the province would have had an independent mechanism capable of asking difficult but necessary questions. Are municipalities adequately prepared for climate-related disaster? Are environmental risks being properly integrated into infrastructure planning? Are vulnerable communities in the Garden Route, Worcester, Karoo, and Overberg receiving the protection and investment they require? Are government departments implementing their climate adaptation commitments effectively? As climate-related disasters become more frequent and more severe, the people of this province deserve more than promises. They deserve institutions that can hold government accountable, measure progress, and ensure climate resilience is not merely a policy aspiration, but a practical reality. We to call on the Premier to appoint the Environmental Commissioner as provided in the Constitution. For too long, poor working class communities in this province have carried the burden of underinvestment inadequate infrastructure, spatial exclusion, and reactive governance. Every winter, the same communities flood. Every disaster exposes the same vulnerabilities. Every recovery process leaves the same communities waiting the longest for assistance and rebuilding. The reality is that many poor communities feel systematically neglected by the provincial government that too often prioritizes public relations over meaningful transformation. While government celebrates its success through social media, the content and carefully managed narratives, thousands of residents continue to live in flood-prone settlement without adequate drainage. Premier, people can see the difference between political branding and genuine service delivery. And increasingly, they are asking difficult questions about who benefits from the priorities of this government and who continues to be left behind. Premier, it is time to get your house in order. The responsibility of government is not to govern only for those who voted for it. The responsibility of government is to serve every resident of this province, every farm worker, every pensioner, every informal settlement resident, every rural community, every working class family struggle to build after floods, fires, and storms. As we move towards the local government election, communities will make their own assessment. They will judge governments not by slogan, press statements, or social media campaign, but by the lived reality of their daily lives. They will ask whether their roads are maintained, whether their homes are protected, whether their communities are safer, whether their children have opportunities, and whether government has treated them with dignity and fairness. And I can only say, Premier, history will judge you. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lekker. Order members, Honorable Minister, before I recognize you, do you need the podium? I now recognize the Minister of Local Government, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, Minister Bredel.
Dankie agbare speaker. Die afgelope dekade is ons mense van die Weskaap gekonfronteer met reeds toenemende ernstige klimaatsrampe. Ons het verwoestende droogtes beleef wat uitgeloop het op dag 0 in 2018. COVID-19 tot 21 het ons getref, groot veldbrande het ons getref, voet en melk het ons getref en ons is deur ernstige storms in 2023-2024 ervaar wat gelei het tot grootskaalse ontwrigting van ons gemeenskappe, miljarde rande se skade aan ons infrastruktuur aangerig het en toe Mei vanjaar het 'n ernstige afsny-laagterstelsel ons provinsie getref wat uitgebreide verwoesting veroorsaak het. Meer as 55,000 inwoners het humanitêre ondersteuning nodig gehad. Eskom het meer as 200 kragonderbrekings op sy netwerk aangeteken wat gelei het tot meer as 9,000 aangemelde foute reg oor ons provinsie. Altesaam 126 van ons paaie was gesluit terwyl gemeenskappe afgesny en vervoernetwerke ontwrig was. Hierdie vervoernetwerke 75% herstel na 'n week. Eskom het 93% van die kragonderbrekings herstel. Speaker, terwyl ons vandag hier debat voer, bring nog 'n afsny-laagstelsel stortreën aan die hele tuinroete en sentraal Karoo. Hierdie gebeure is nie meer uitsonderlik nie. Dit word deel van die werklikheid. Ek wil graag met die opmerking van die agbare lid Brian oor klimaatsverandering net beamoen en versterk. Klimaatsverandering is werklik, dit is hier in die Weskaap. Ons streek word oor die algemeen warmer en droër, terwyl uiterste weeromstandighede meer intens en meer gereeld voorkom. Storms en droogtes duur langer, veldbrande is meer verwoestend. Die bewyse is nie meer bloot teoreties nie, dit is sigbaar in ons landskappe, ons gemeenskappe en ons ekonomie. Agbare Masipa het aangeraak die impak wat hierdie gebeure op die landbousektor het hy uitgelig. Landbou bly een van ons belangrikste drywers van die Weskaap ekonomie. Dit onderhou landelike gemeenskappe, ondersteun voedselsekuriteit en skep werksgeleenthede reg oor ons provinsie. En ons het die ekonomiese groei brood nodig. Ons premier het onlangs gesê, "We must continue to work as hard as we can. We will intensify efforts to attract and to support investment into critical sectors of this provincial economy, including tourism, manufacturing, agribusiness and services, so that job growth accelerates and reaches all corners of this province. 'n Groeiende ekonomie bly een van die doeltreffendste instrumente wat ons het om armoede, ongelykheid en werkloosheid aan te spreek. Om die landbou teen die gevolge van klimaatsverandering te beskerm, is daarom nie slegs 'n omgewingsnoodsaaklikheid nie, dit is ook 'n ekonomiese en maatskaplike noodsaaklikheid. Minister Simmers het die enorme druk uiteengesit waaraan ons infrastruktuur blootgestel word as gevolg van hierdie toenemende ernstige weergebeure. Brûe, paaie, stormwaterkanale, infrastruktuur en openbare fasiliteite word blootgestel aan toestande waarvoor hulle nie oorspronklik ontwerp is nie. Ja, ons moet beter bou. Ja, ons moet meer veerkragtige infrastruktuur in belê. Ja, dit bring hoë koste mee. Agbare Spreker, Minister Baartman het tereg daarop gewys dat die herstel na hierdie rampe samewerking en investering van al drie regeringssfere sal vereis. Maar befondsing alleen is nie genoeg nie. Openbare fondse moet beskerm word en vir hul bedoelde doel aangewend word. Ons kan nie situasies aanvaar waar hulprampfondse aan munisipaliteite toegeken word, net om later te ontdek dat die geld elders aangewend is nie. Rampe ontbloot swakhede baie vinnig. Dit plaas bestuur en finansiële tekortkominge onder die vergrootglas. Elke rand wat op randherstel bestem voor is, moet in die gemeenskap en op die infrastruktuur waarvoor dit bedoel is, spandeer word. Agbare Spreker, ons bly bekommerd dat 'n klein aantal munisipaliteite steeds sukkel om basiese finansiële bestuur en goeie regering reg te kry. Die agbare Said het 'n vraag gevra, agbare Spreker, en deur jou. Hy ask, why vulnerable community suffers? Die antwoord is baie eenvoudig. Answer is very simple. Because of 30 years of ANC corruption and misgovernment. That is the answer to his question. It's very simple. The Honourable Said,
Order.
The biggest disaster, the biggest disaster, unfortunately, Honourable Speaker, was a reoccurring disaster where the voters vote for the ANC 5 terms in a row. So 30 years of ANC corruption, that's our biggest disaster. Honourable Speaker, he mentioned nice now, and I can't help.
Order, members.
I can't help to feel for
Order.
Because, Honourable Speaker, if you are a member of the ANC, the last word you will use is nice now. Nice now was just fined 638 million rand. The municipal manager that he alluded to was in front of the judge. That was the fine, 638 million rand.
Honourable Minister, please take your seat. Order. Order. Honourable members on my left and order. Honourable Nkondlo. Honourable Nkondlo. Order. Honourable members. Order, members. Honourable member, do you have a point of order? Honourable Nkondlo. Honourable Nkondlo, there is a member on the floor.
Thank you very much.
Order, Honourable Nkondlo.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I want to establish, Speaker, from a member who's from a community that presided over apartheid capitalism, whether he's prepared to take a question.
Honourable member, what's your point of order?
I want to understand whether MEC who's from the apartheid capitalism community.
What's your point of order?
Take a question.
Honourable members, order. Honourable Minister, are you prepared to take a question? The Minister is not prepared to take a question. Honourable Walters, what's your point of order? Honourable Walters, please take your seat. Honourable Nkondlo, this is the last. Honourable Nkondlo, This is the last time that I'm going to ask for you to please respect the decorum of the House. Because it's a political debate, I've allowed interjections. But you are drowning out the speaker on the floor, and it's now affecting the decorum of the House. Honorable Chief Whip, I'm on the floor. The same way I provide an opportunity when a member's on the floor, I expect the same when I'm on the floor. Honorable Walters, is that a point of order?
Yes, Honourable Speaker, I think there's a difference between heckling and the kind of shouting and screaming that we've just been seeing. Chair, if I can just ask that you review the exchanges that took place there and perhaps make a ruling. I think it went far beyond the decorum of the House. It was an absolute assault on the Honourable Minister.
Order. I will order, honourable members. There was a request for a review of Hansard. I will certainly do so, and I'll come back to the House with a ruling. Honourable Minister, you may continue.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, ja, soos ons sê in Afrikaans, feite maak seer. Waarheid maak seer. Honourable Speaker, the fine of 608, the fine of 638 million rand.
Honourable members. Honourable
fine...
Minister, please take your seat. Honourable members on my left-hand side. Heckling and interjections are allowed, but you are drowning out the speaker. You cannot compete with the speaker on the floor. There's rules in this House, which we all adopted at the beginning of this session. Honourable Minister, my apologies, you may continue.
Honourable Speaker, the 638 million rand is real. It's a fine in the court for NISNA. COVID-19, where's the disaster funding? Can the ANC explain that to us? Where's the corruption with COVID-19? What has happened with that money? So just to make my point, the money, die geld is gesteel, agbare Speaker. Dis hoekom ons sukkel om voor te kom. Agbare Speaker, aan die agbare Michaels van die NCC, en dis ongelukkige feite. Waar is die 41 miljoen rand wat TWK gekry het vir rampherstelwerk? Waar is die geld? Die geld is
Order.
Die geld
Honourable
is
members.
So
Honourable Minister, please take your seat. Honourable members. Order. Honourable Michaels. Honourable Chief Whip, on my left-hand side, can I please ask that you assist? Honourable Michaels, honourable members, order. Honourable members, while I understand that this is a political debate and that there's a different views on inputs, members, you're affecting the decorum of the House. There's citizens watching this debate online. These are their citizens who is directly affected by what you are debating today. Can I please ask, in the interest of those citizens that we are elected to serve, to allow the citizen to hear the inputs, whether you agree or disagree with the inputs? Honourable Michaels, I'm on the floor. Honourable members, we cannot continue in this vein. Honourable Michaels, is there a point of order?
Ek wil geluister het of die minister 'n vraag ek wil 'n vraag aan die minister vra.
Ek sal vir die minister vra. Minister, is jy bereid om 'n vraag te beantwoord? Die minister is nie bereid om die vraag te beantwoord nie. Honourable member, is that a point of order?
Chair. There is this chaos on the basis that the MEC is insensitive given the language he uses, given his historic location that is from a community that presided over apartheid and is offending this side of the House, given the content of his messages. So based on that, the general content and the language he's using in his speech is quite offending to us.
Okay.
And that's the noise.
Thank you very much. Honourable members, I was listening very carefully to the members or the minister's input. He is not offending or is not offensive to any member in this house. And whilst some of us may be offended by inputs, it doesn't make it unparliamentary. And my duty is to ensure that the rules of Parliament are being applied consistently, and that's what we are doing. If you have an issue with the content, there's other parliamentary mechanisms to challenge the inputs made by members, but it's not the job or the duty of the presiding officer to preside over the content of submissions. Honourable Minister, you may continue.
Thank you, Akbar Speaker. Akbar Speaker, to the Honourable Murray, the system holds. I'm very proud. This disaster hit the whole province. Dit was nie dat ons mense kon geskuif het van een distrik na 'n ander een nie, uit die hele provinsie, en die system holds. We've protected a lot of people. We saved directly 651 lives. So we're very proud of that work. Honourable Speaker, klimaatsverandering maak geen onderskeid nie. Die gevolge word gevoel deur die boere, deur ondernemings, deur munisipaliteite, deur infrastruktuuroperateurs en die ergste deur die kwesbare gemeenskappe, dikwels met die minste hulpbronne om te herstel. As jy verlede maand langs die oewer van die Brede Rivier gestaan het, sou jy die krag van die natuur aangevoel het. Agbare Speaker, ons kan ons infrastruktuur en ons moet ons infrastruktuur versterk. Ons kan beter doen om meer rampgereed te wees. Maar ek wil die huis verseker dat voor elke winter het ons munisipaliteite 'n wintergereedheidsprogram. Die agbare Baakman het genoem, goeie bestuurde munisipaliteite so Swartland het 'n baie kleiner impak
Agbare Minister, jou tyd is verspreke.
Goeie regering danksy DA.
Honourable Minister, please take your seat. Order. Honourable members, order. Honourable Van Vogel, Honourable Van Vogel, the debate is concluded. Order, Honourable Member, if you want to address the chair, please rise and I will recognize you. Honourable Member, is that a point of order?
Yes, Speaker, Member Masipa is saying we are having them. The people are still staying without houses as we are sitting here today.
Honourable Member, that is not order. That is not a point of order.
He's going to sleep lekker tonight.
Order. Honourable members, that is not a point of order for the record. Honourable members, that brings us to the end of this debate. We will now move on to interpellations in terms of Rule 197, and I recognize the Premier Windy.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and thank you very much to the Honourable Barnes for the question. The Western Cape Government's current strategy towards crime represents a deliberate shift towards an integrated, targeted, and system-wide approach, which combines violence prevention, strengthened community safety, and more effective law enforcement into a coordinated framework aimed at achieving sustained reductions in violence. The Western Cape Government's approach to safety, informed by the 2025-2030 Provincial Strategic Plan, or PSP, has three strategic outcomes: integrated violence prevention, safe and secure communities and infrastructure, effective and responsive law enforcement. Our most notable interventions are thus aligned to these outcomes, expressing a recognition that any approach to violence prevention must be deliberately targeted to where it is most effective. We see this in our area-based teams convened by the Department of Health and Wellness's Violence Prevention Unit. We see it in government departments and local partners jointly diagnose the specific social and environmental conditions driving violence in priority areas and coordinate targeted, context-specific interventions. These interventions are reinforced by programs that build social cohesion, resilience, and youth opportunity. Interventions include improving access to parenting programs and rollout of early adolescent skills for emotions, or EASE program, as well as the initiatives like, for example, the Chrysalis Academy, the MOD programs, and the Kulesa Care Initiative. And interesting that now our teams have actually gone to the presidency because they are also very keen on seeing if this can be replicated in other parts of our country. Speaker, this House has also been briefed several times on the Planet Youth Survey, which works to understand and address specific problems facing our youth as directed by their responses. Speaker, ultimately, though, the greatest tool we have to fight against crime is the creation of jobs through economic growth. The Year Beyond and pay internship programs are specifically geared towards ensuring that our young people have a foothold in our growing provincial economy. Nothing stops a bullet like a job, and our stellar star record of unemployment in this province represents not only substantial indicators, but also well-being of our people, but also one of our most important weapons to fight against crime and, of course, to fight against poverty. But despite the fact that this question asked us is to ignore the boots on the ground initiatives, we cannot lose sight of the fact that a strong investigative and enforcement capacity is still necessary, especially from SAPS and the whole criminal justice system. That is why we are going above and beyond to work with our partners in other spheres of government, among other collaborative initiatives such as the Provincial Joint Priority Committee and the Anti-Gang Implementation Plan, as well as the collaboration agreement with the City of Cape Town, the South African Police Services, and also to maintain a Provincial Safety Council. This is where we bring together stakeholders from across government spheres, the judicial system at large, academic contributors, and stakeholders to ensure alignment on strategy. I'm sure that the member would agree that in order to fully realize a safe future, we must make progress along both avenues, enforcement and prevention. We do everything within our mandate to create safer communities, but it is also vital that the SAPS and the NPA and every part of the justice system.
Honourable Premier, your time has expired for your first response. I recognise the Honourable Barnes. Do you need the podium? Can I get the podium to Honourable Barnes, please? Can I get the podium to Honourable Barnes, please? Agbare Barnes, is jy gereed?
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I must say that the question here at times, it seems it's not clearly understood. From what I asked was, what is the strategy of the provincial government to implement, one, address the socio-economic root causes of crime, two, strengthen intergovernmental coordination on safety. When it comes to root causes, the Speaker, one really feels that you are speaking next to a wall. It's not understood. The question before us today is not simply whether there has been an improvement in policing outcomes, nor whether additional officers have been deployed to our streets. The real question is whether the Western Cape government, after nearly 2 decades in the office, has meaningfully addressed the structural conditions that produce crime in the first place. The latest crime statistics do show a slight decline in certain categories, and we acknowledge that any reduction in murder and attempted murder represents lives saved. But we must not mistake marginal improvement for systematic success. Between January and March this year alone, 983 people were murdered in the Western Cape, with more than 1,000 victims of attempted murder. Alarmingly, 225 of those murders were gang-related, meaning nearly 1 in every 4 murders in the province is directly linked to gang activity. Honourable Deputy Speaker, despite the deployment of leaf officers, specialized anti-gang units, Operation Prosper, and even SANDF, gang violence continues to devastate working-class communities. This reality demonstrates a hard truth that the deployment of boots on the ground alone cannot resolve a crisis rooted in deeper socio-economic spatial conditions. Deputy Speaker, more than a decade ago, the DA-led government commissioned the O'Regan-Piccoli inquiry into policing in Khayelitsha, spending millions of rands to do so. That commission clearly identified the drivers of crime, including entrenched poverty, unemployment, apartheid, spatial design, social exclusion, weak public service, and breakdown of trust between communities and law enforcement. Yet today, the same communities identified in that report, which is Nyanga, Khayelitsha, Delft, Philippi, Mfuleni, Menenberg, Mitchell's Plain, and Kraaifontein, remain amongst the most violent in the country. As die commissie korrek was, hoekom is die bevindings nie geïmplementeer? En as dit geïmplementeer was, why do these communities remain trapped in the cycles of violence? The reality, Deputy Speaker, is that gangsterism and the drug economy have become survival systems in the absence of meaning socio-economic transformation. Honorable Deputy Speaker, after almost 20 years, the DA governance, can the Premier honestly tell this House that what measurable progress has been made in changing socio-economic and spatial conditions identified by the O'Regan-Piccoli Commission as the root causes of crime? I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Barnes. I recognize Honorable Walters.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I thank the Premier for his response. It is clear that this provincial government is going above and beyond to ensure our youth have every opportunity to live a fulfilling and stimulating life, free from gangsterism and drugs. The Chrysalis Academy is a shining example of a program that offers development opportunities that set our youth up for skills to enter the job market. A social development department is front and center when it comes to providing psychosocial support to children who are victims of trauma as a result of violence in their homes and communities. And our education department has invested millions in school resource officers to enhance safety in our most at-risk schools, ensuring that every child has a fair opportunity to get a quality education. Honourable Deputy Speaker, lastly, I would like to emphasize that, as the Premier said, nothing stops a bullet like a job. And the Western Cape's obsession with job creation will result in safer communities for our people. Speaker or Deputy Speaker, through you, I'd like to pose a question to the Premier. How does the government's apex priority of job creation support a safer province for our people?
Thank you, Honorable Walters. I recognize the Honorable Barnes.
Thank you again, Deputy Speaker. Ek dink die Here moet maar nou self afkom en die vraag vra dat hy net kan verstaan word wat sê ons eintlik, want lyk my ja, is geen verstand teenoor wat ons hier praat. Ons net besig om ons tyd te mors as al. The Premier himself tabled in this House a report of the Western Cape Police Ombudsman arising from the Tulare judgment, dealing with allegation of possible infiltration of SAPS structured by organized criminal networks. The Premier told this House that if these allegations are proven, they would represent one of the greatest betrayals of our democracy. At the same time, South Africa now has the Madlanga Commission investigating serious allegations of corruption, organized crime, criminal infiltration, and interference within the law enforcement and criminal justice system. Yet it is deeply concerning that the Western Cape, the province carrying the overwhelming burden of gang murders, extortion, racketeering, drug trafficking, and organized crime, is not at the center of these national investigations. How can a province responsible for approximately 93% of South Africa's gang-related murders not be a central focus of national investigations into organized crime? How can communities in Nyanga, Khayelitsha, Delft, Mitchell's Plain, and Gugulethu, including Menenberg, live under daily terror from extortion, gangs, while allegations of criminal infiltration into policing structures are already on record? Yet there is no urgent or coordinated national focus in this specific province. Die vraag word nie verstaan nie. This House must not look away, especially as our schools in Khayelitsha are forced to pay extortion. We therefore call on the Premier to urgently submit the Western Cape Police Ombudsman report to the Madlanga Commission, and to formally request that allegations of organized criminal infiltration, corruption, and criminal networks operating within the Western Cape be investigated without delay. Deputy Speaker, people in this province are tired. They are tired of being told about plans while their children are buried daily. They are tired of hearing of reports and statements while gangs tighten the grip on our own communities where we go back home to. Above all, they are tired of living without safety. This crisis is not only about visible policing, asivari. It is about illegal firearms flooding our streets, weak action against extortion networks, drug trade economies that remain untouched, and the absence of serious intelligence-led attack on the financial networks of that sustained gangs. We therefore ask the Premier, beyond police deployments and announcements, what real and measurable steps has his government taken to break the organized criminal networks driving violence into this province? Dat kan regtig nie meer so aan nie. Genoeg is genoeg, Deputy Speaker. Ek hoop die vraag is nou verstaan. Dankie.
Thank you, Honorable Barnes. To conclude the interpellation, I recognize the Premier.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start off with the first part of the question, excluding the boots on the ground strategy used to target gang violence. In other words, let's focus on the other side of the equation, violence prevention. The honourable member asks the question, listens to my response, and then reads a prepared speech that she'd written before I responded. It had nothing to do with my response. That's not how interpellations work. She then spoke about policing. Then if she wants to ask about policing, she should ask about policing, not talk about not policing, and then reply to policing. But I'm glad she spoke about the O'Regan Commission or the Khayelitsha Commission. 27. She should listen now, Honourable Speaker.
Honourable members, Honourable Premier, honourable members, previously when the House erupted in this particular way, the Speaker already made comments in that regard. The interpellation as printed on the question paper is very clear, where there is a number of speakers, and the Premier is concluding this particular interpellation. There's residents awaiting the response, and those residents are eagerly listening to inputs from the left of the House and on my right to the House. And I would want us to ensure that the residents are able to listen attentively. But Honourable Barnes, is that a point of order?
Deputy Speaker, can he refer to me as Member Barnes? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Honourable members, I'm going to make one comment in that regard. We are in the month of June, which ultimately means that it's the second year officially, almost officially next week. It will be, or next week, it will officially be 2 years, and that members are familiar with the rules. Please speak to the chair, and if there's any reference to a member, it should be the honourable member. Premier, I recognize you.
Thank you, Speaker, and I respectfully apologize to the honourable member Barnes, he being me doing so. I'm very happy that the honourable member referred to the O'Regan Commission or the Khayelitsha Commission as it is commonly referred to. And the interesting thing is the 27 recommendations of that commission. I mean, unbelievable. You can go through them one by one and say, so what difference did that commission make? She speaks about the millions of rand spent. So let's say, like item 2, police should treat residents with respect. Let's look at item 4. The number of detectives serving in Khayelitsha needs to be increased. That isn't happening. The commission itself and the findings were not taken seriously. Vigilante killings must be recorded as a category crime. Let's go to number 20. Expand internal investigations beyond just police station level. But you can go one by one. And that is a big problem, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in our system. We have these commissions, they are not taken seriously. Then I was asked to submit the report to the Mahlanga Commission. It has already been sent. It's been sent to the minister. It was sent to everybody. of course, with those key names redacted because it was only a page and a half. But the real question is, when a judge says the gangsters are sitting at the top table of the police, only one thing happened after that statement. We did an investigation through the ombudsman. The national minister did nothing. The oversight committees did nothing. No one else in this country did a thing about that specific case. I then said post that the only thing what we would really like to see is lifestyle audits. Well, years later, they are still talking about the lifestyle audits. Those police officers have long gone and retired. It is unacceptable. It is absolutely unacceptable. So this is a very serious issue, Deputy Speaker, a very serious issue. I thank the honourable member for bringing
Honourable
it here.
Premier,
And we
please,
should put proper questions and then listen to those
please take your
answers
seat,
so
Honourable
that we
Premier.
actually deal with this as a parliament. Thank you.
Honourable members, prior to Member Syed raising his hand for a point of order, I was very close to requesting that the Premier take his seat, because even though the Premier is 10 feet away from me, it became a struggle to even listen to what the Premier is saying due to the running commentary. Member Syed?
Chair, I was about to ask if the Premier could take a question, but then I've realized no, because the Premier is not. I mean, my point of order, first it was to ask if he could take a question, but the point of order is relevance. The Premier is responding on issues which were not raised in the interpellation or the follow-up by Member Barnes. Yet he accuses Member Barnes of not speaking to the interpellation. So I think really the question I wanted to ask was, did the Premier
you are
listen to the
unable to-
speech? Did the Premier
No,
listen to Member
no,
Barnes?
Member Syed.
No, but
You,
but I'm not going ahead. I'm asking. I'm just saying I wanted to ask it. I'm not
No,
going
thank
ahead
you.
and asking. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Honourable members, there is 50 seconds remaining. There's 50 seconds remaining to the interpellation. Member Walters.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I think I'm responding to the call for the point of order there. There was a request to rule on the relevance. And equally, if I can ask that you can rule on the relevance of the entire input of Member Barnes, because it was all deflecting responsibility away from the SAPS to the provincial government, whose constitutional mandate is clearly not understood by the ANC. So perhaps you can also rule on the relevance of her entire submission here today.
Honourable members, I'm going to, Honourable Barnes, I'm going to make one comment before I recognize the Premier again. I'm not going to, at this stage, rule on the relevance, crime, and the devastation that it's causing our society. It has deep effects and it leads to trauma in our society. Please let us afford the Premier for the remaining 50 seconds to ultimately wrap up this interpellation.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I say again, the question says excluding policing. Let's go to strategy. I'll talk about PSP and all of the strategies, but the honourable member read both of her replies, so she didn't listen to any of it. It was pre-prepared. That's not what an interpellation is about. And then, of course, the biggest embarrassment is when the leader of the opposition stands up and asks, he's going to ask a question about relevance. The two things I wrote down from her input, which was pre-planned, was the O'Regan Commission and the Ombudsman report, and that's what I was
On a point
replying
of
on.
order, Speaker.
That's what a debate is about. So,
On a point of order, Speaker.
I mean, this is just
On a,
idiotic.
on a point of order, Speaker. We are writing questions here and we mean business when we want to be answered. We are representing communities. We are not here in some lecture class by the Premier on how we are supposed to be answering. And we mean, Premier, if you are not serious, people are dying every day here. For once, be serious.
Honourable Barnes.
We know you are a joke.
Honourable members, honourable members, honourable members, I have the floor. Honourable members, we are in a stage leading up to a to a specific date at the end of this year. Various residents are listening attentively to what inputs political parties are making. Obviously, depending on where you are seated, there would be certain views that will be held. On the other side, that views might be totally different. But we must respect the decorum of the House. We might not agree with each and every input that a different member gives, but we must respect the decorum of the House as members that have taken an oath in this particular House. And that's why there's rules, and that's why there is speaking times, ultimately to afford each and every party, each and every member an opportunity to give that input. It might not be what we agree to or agree with. I'm going to allow the Premier to wrap up in 15 seconds. Is a different point of order?
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I heard, and I'm not expecting you to rule now, but you can consult the Hansard. It's unparliamentary for the Premier to refer to what members are saying as idiotic. I clearly heard him say that. If he's not willing to withdraw, then I advise that you consult the Hansard and you come back just for the sake of progress. Thank you.
Thank you. I've made a note, and I will definitely then apply my mind in that regard. The Premier. And the Premier heard, so the Premier can make that comment. The Premier heard, and the Premier can make that comment, but I can revert back.
I had actually finished, and I'll wait for your ruling.
Thank you so much, honourable members. That concludes this interpellation. We will now proceed in terms of the order paper and the question paper and move over to questions in terms of Rule 202. I wish to advise the honourable members that once the Premier or the Minister has started the reply to the oral question as printed on the question paper, honourable members must use the chat facility for this sitting of the House to indicate that they want to ask a follow-up question. There are 4 opportunities for follow-up questions, but the honourable member who has posed the initial oral question as printed on the question paper will have the first opportunity for follow-up questions. Thereafter, other members might ask additional questions up to 4. Honourable members, I now recognize the Minister, Minister Simmers.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and through you, thank you to the member for the question. I will then accordingly respond thereto. The A part, which deals with the challenges. The human settlements sector continues to face significant challenges that slow the delivery of housing opportunities in the Western Cape. These include, but are not limited to, construction mafia activities, limited well-located land, poor contractor performance, insufficient municipal capacity, land invasions, bulk infrastructure constraints, and inadequate or misaligned funding mechanisms. These challenges are compounded by rapid urbanization, population growth, the expansion of informal settlements, rising construction costs, delays in approvals, and community disruptions at project sites, all of which place increasing pressure on housing delivery. How are we responding to this? Just the B part of the question. The Western Cape Department of Infrastructure is implementing various interventions to accelerate housing delivery, but also improve sector resilience. These include pursuing alternative funding mechanisms through the Western Cape Infrastructure Framework, strengthening partnerships with municipalities and the private sector, prioritizing catalytic and integrated human settlements projects as well. The department is also identifying and releasing suitable land for development, upgrading informal settlements, which are listed in our business plan, strengthening contractor oversight, improving infrastructure coordination, and working with law enforcement agencies to address unlawful site disruptions and construction mafia activities The C part, which relates to the outcomes of our interventions and what have they been able to achieve. These interventions have supported the continued delivery of subsidized housing units, service sites, social housing, and informal settlement upgrading initiatives across our province. Progress has also been made in improving access to basic services, advancing catalytic development, and promoting better spatial integration for maximum impact. In addition, improving coordination with municipalities has actually strengthened our projects are being implementation ready, but also proper infrastructure planning, while our affordable housing programs and title deed interventions have expanded access to housing opportunities, tenure security, but most importantly, asset ownership for the qualifying beneficiaries across our province. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you so much, Minister. I recognize Honourable Wessels.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Can the Minister confirm whether, despite the challenges, the department is still able to deliver the quality housing that meets the requirement building standards? And if so, what mechanisms are in place to consistent quality housing units across the province? Thanks.
Honourable Minister.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and to the Honourable Member. In terms of the delivery of quality housing opportunities, which entails all the programs which we deliver on, this is from the service sites to the breaking new ground housing opportunities, to our affordable housing units, our social housing units, but also where we pilot projects such as the deferred ownership in Cape Agulhas, but also incremental housing initiative which we are piloting in Melkoutfontein, in Esekwa. There is a defined structure to ensure that the quality is not compromised, which we deliver, given that we do not chase quantity but quality for our people. But there are also sectors, partners which play a phenomenal role. Firstly, at municipal level, you do have a stage where the municipality also does quality control at various stages of these units being constructed. You have the NHBRC, who also send out their inspectors. And thirdly, you also have our provincial team, which also inspects. And then all three of these concur or look at issues if they are highlighted in units. We have noted instances where, sadly, certain opposition parties and the members demand localized labor, and we have seen the impact of the quality they produce, sadly for us, where multiple units will need to be redone or has been redone to ensure that it delivers up to the quality which is expected of our department to deliver. So many a times there are opposition parties in this House, Honourable Deputy Speaker, through you to the Honourable Member, which focuses on quality, but they do not ask the question how it is that certain units have to be redone, which we redo, due to the sad impact of the focus on localization and the use of local labor, when sadly the very same community who we empower deliver substandard quality, which we then need to rectify to be in line with the national norms and standards which has been set to ensure that our beneficiaries at the end of the day do obtain a quality unit. But I think it's also important to understand, as we hand over a quality unit, the qualifying beneficiaries, prior to obtaining their keys, Honourable Deputy Speaker, through you to the Honourable Member, are given an induction training in terms of what their duties are. Given that new homes do have specific defects which does appear at certain stages, there are 3-month lag period after they take occupation of their unit, where such a beneficiary must then, if there are anything within that 3 months, they then need to ensure that the contractor is then alerted to come and rectify that. After the 3-month cycle, there is a secondary process which is followed. Then also in terms of the quality of the roofs, part of the building, Honourable Deputy Speaker, there is a longer period where the NHBRC does ensure that should there be any issues pertaining to the roofing structure, that there is a process which can be followed through our provincial department, through the NHBRC, where assessments would then be done. So there is sufficient safety mechanisms and quality insurance mechanisms built into the cycle and process to ensure that we do not compromise the quality which we are delivering to qualifying beneficiaries across our province, but also through the various housing programs, which is funded through various grants. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I recognize the Honourable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister. The question that I have as followed for the Minister is about the alternative and blended finance reserve that was established by the Minister of Finance in the budget speech and allocated 518 million rand. What portion of that 518 million rand has been allocated to address the housing backlog?
Thank you, Honourable Heron. I recognize the Minister.
No, thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and through you to the Honourable Heron. If it's in order with the House, I will prepare a written submission which will actually give the Honourable Member a detailed breakdown of where the ABF funding is being utilised in terms of our housing programs. Given that I would allow the member to also then keep track of those specific projects which we are focusing on, but that the ABF fund is being utilized as one of the various formats of new financial modeling as we move into the future to ensure that as the HSDG grant, among others, decline, that we sustain our focus on affordable housing, and we are the top province in terms of focusing on affordable housing, to ensure that alternative financing approaches are there to ensure that we unlock the true potential of projects within our pipeline that are actually and ultimately implementation ready. So I will provide through Deputy Speaker the member a written breakdown to which the member can then peruse. Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. In the absence of additional hands, we proceed, and I now again recognize the Minister dealing with question number 13, which stood over. Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to Member Heron for the question, but also that I can respond to it today. I will answer the first and second part of the question together because they actually intertwine, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The single integrated infrastructure pipeline of projects consists of projects across the three spheres of government. It includes projects of the private sector as well. This pipeline currently consists, and this is as of last week, 52 projects, and will continue to grow as more projects are added to the list and become market ready to find funding for it. The creation of the pipeline directly corresponds to the need to foster new partnerships with external parties, whether they be development finance institutions or the private sector, and the need to explore innovative and alternative funding, risk sharing, procurement, and contracting models in order to scale and fast-track infrastructure delivery. The vast majority of public sector projects on the pipeline requires a level of blended financing or further project development, as existing budgetary allocations are insufficient to take these projects to realization at either feasibility or even the bankability stage. The creation of the pipeline and the process associated with it, such as the exploration of alternative and blended funding mechanisms, is a direct response to this reality. Within this context, the Department, in conjunction with our partner, the Provincial Treasury, and the relevant project owners, is currently exploring which funding, risk sharing, procurement, contracting, and delivery models could most appropriately be applied to each of the projects on the pipeline, given that each project does differ, and thus the way that it is funded, among other things, needs to be properly addressed to make it feasible. The department is also assisting project owners in packaging the relevant project information in such a manner as to attract possible investors or even funder interest. Work already done in this regard can be accessed via our department website, following a link to what we call our elevator pitches, honourable member, but also our infrastructure prospectus. I will provide all members of the House through you, Deputy Speaker, actually to that link, so that they can then also see, because as the pipeline grows and as the prospectus grows, all members who wish to exercise oversight over what we are doing in terms of this innovative approach can then be kept abreast as this is updated as projects go through our various stages which we have set. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I recognize a member who posed a question. Member Heron, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I didn't really hear which projects or what proportion of the pipeline was not funded or unfunded or dependent on external funding. But let me ask the Minister in this way. What is the drop list in this pipeline? So which projects are most at risk if we do not achieve private or blended finance for them? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the member for the follow-up question. Indeed, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the way that the singular pipeline has been structured, but more so specific, the projects which require additional funding to ensure that they go from planning to implementation. There are 52 human settlements forms or human settlements projects and programs forms a core component of that. And again, the detailed drop-down list of those projects which are now implementation ready is available on the link, which I will share with all members. And I'll forward that link to the members specifically, because those are the projects which are implementation ready, which speaks to our focus on affordable housing, a component of social housing, and also on affordable rental options, but and which were at risk, given that we know that SHRA and which the issues they are confronted with, and the fact that we have so much opportunities which are implementation ready in our pipeline, but which would have been sadly taken longer for implementation because it was dependent on specific type of grant funding. Where there are linkages to the social housing component, which obviously is SHRA does play a role in that. We are busy in discussions which is linked ultimately to the pipeline and our focus on alternative funding to mitigate the risk which the possibility of inefficient or funding does pose to those projects, because they are implementation ready. They are part of the singular pipeline, Deputy Speaker. We are in discussions with the relevant national bodies which actually are interested as possible co-funders and partners, and those discussions are at advanced stages. At this stage, so Honourable Deputy Speaker, through you to the member, the list is on the drop-down list. The projects which are there would have never come to full implementation stage if we were totally just reliant on grants to fund them. Hence the focus on finding alternative financing models and structures, but also to mitigate the risks and the future risks, among others, of being too heavily grant dependent on unlocking their full potential into the future.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the Honourable Wessels.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I was partially covered, but just in the light of Provincial Treasury that received the award for the blended financing framework, how does this framework assist in the completion of the housing projects that forms part of the pipeline? Thanks.
Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and through you to the member. First, I need to acknowledge and thank my partner, the Minister of Finance, for really bringing this facility to life. It really speaks to where we are heading in terms of partnerships, even within our own sister departments, to unlock the true potential of infrastructure across our province. Now, in terms of the critical funding, the gaps that will be bridged by the facility, we need to understand that the facility will mobilize new money from private, philanthropic, and multilateral sources to overcome the constrained fiscal space that limits or could have limited our traditional government funding for large housing projects, given the scale of what we have been announcing over the last few months. It deploys a tailored social sector instrument This is where the framework provides a specific toolkit for social infrastructure, recommending the use of donor grants, co-investments with NGOs or construction-related organizations, but also social impact bonds or SIBSs for projects with high socioeconomic value but limited commercial viability. It also enables prudent risk sharing, which means it provides a legally anchored guide to share financial risks with external investors and development finance institutions, while also reducing the province's direct balance sheet exposure while keeping projects viable. In terms of securing long-term budget integration, we do this, or it seeks to do, by feeding housing initiatives into a central project pipeline database that is directly integrated with our multi-year budget process. It thus ensures future financial obligations are secured, but are also aligned with the province's long-term infrastructure goals. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the Honourable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister. Minister, the question to the Minister is with regards to the unfunded projects in the pipeline and to make them attractive for alternative or investment funding. How will the new Western Cape infrastructure facility de-risk these projects? Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
No, thank you very much indeed, Honourable Deputy Speaker, through you. And this is where the infrastructure implementation plan and the parameters which we have set to evaluate projects. And one of those elements is how do we de-risk it? Again, in terms of de-risking those projects, it needs to be understood that and this actually ties into my response, Honourable Heron, that I just did to the Honourable Member Wessels before you. And part of the de-risking component is legally anchored. There's a guide to ensure that we share financial risks with external investors, but also the development finance institutions, thereby reducing our province's direct balance sheet exposure while keeping these projects viable, again, in terms of the scoring matrices and the principles which we utilize to do that. And at an appropriate stage, through you, Deputy Chair, to the Standing Committee of Infrastructure's chairperson, I think it will be quite prudent that this one element of our process that we perhaps initiate a discussion or presentation to the Standing Committee, which will expand a lot more in what I'm explaining now, so that the members can have a full, proper understanding of that specific component of our principles. Thank you.
In the absence of any further hands, we proceed to the final standover question. I recognize the Minister again.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition for the question. Due to the ongoing funding challenges within the department and in-year budget cuts being implemented by the National Department of Human Settlements, our department is forced to review budgets and prioritize projects that are implementation ready and have existing contractual commitments. This is further exacerbated by the limited internal professional capacity to undertake and oversee new human settlement projects across our province. The Hout Bay project requires significant site enablement processes before it will actually be implementation ready. This includes various statutory processes and authorizations that are required in terms of the Land Use Planning Act and the National Environmental Management Act. But in addition to this, the very nature of the site's locality requires significant consideration of the most appropriate development to be undertaken at that specific site. A typical grant-funded human settlements development is deemed to be an inappropriate development without consideration of mixed use, mixed income opportunities supported by private investment. To this end, the project has been handed over to our department's economic development hub, who will now seek to conceptualize and package this project to maximize the opportunities that this strategic location involves of the specific project. Planning and site enablement is finally now underway as I speak, as per my previous response, which I provided in April 2026. Thank you.
The honourable member who posed the question is Member Syed online. I see no further hands. We will proceed to new questions, and I recognize the Honourable Minister, Minister Bradell.
Honourable Chairperson, thank you to Honourable Bryant for the question. Restoration of ecological ecosystems are undertaken collectively, and information is not disaggregated for wetlands in particularly. Cape Nature implements restoration and maintenance of wetlands within reserves. It manages as part of the protected area management plan for each reserve. This includes regular cleaning of invasive alien vegetation that threatens wetlands ecosystems, hydrological management, maintaining natural water flow patterns, and preventing artificial drainage or blockages, routine maintenance of rehabilitated sites, including erosion control and revegetation. Some activities include involving local communities protecting wetlands through awareness campaigns. The Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning undertakes monitoring and compliance enforcements, ensuring that illegal dumping, encroachment, as well as pollution are addressed. The B part, the main success has been the establishment of the strategic partnership with non-profit organizations to leverage alternative and blended finance mechanisms. A recent highlight is the launch of the Cape Water Bond, where 150 million rand over 5 years was secured for ecological infrastructure, including wetlands. I thank you.
I recognize the member who posed the question, Member Bryant.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Through you to the Minister, I mean, it's fantastic to hear about the work opportunities that are being created through the restoration projects and the EPWP programs and working for wetlands. But Minister, how can we ensure that those skills that are being created are transferred through to those local communities?
Yeah, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Chairperson, the question, it's a process. It's work. It's learning as we go. We understand, and actually, I must give a step back. It started off with the environmental crime that we see is just unimaginable how we're going to solve this. Because you need really a police force, a legal system that supports this. But a lot of these communities are captured by organized crime, actually. And because of the internet and because of the brain behind this and the profiteers of these crimes, they sit overseas. So they've actually captured some of our communities. So this is part of that program to start to give them something to do, to earn an income, so to train them. I'm a firm believer that EPWP was never designed that you must always stay into EPWP. It was a springboard, and from there you must start to train. Now, Cape Nature is one example of an organization and an entity who managed to get EPWP where I think it must be. Like they entered into a 3-year contract, they trained the people, they put them, I think they've got 18 different courses, from a very simple basic course to where we sit with people who now have got their 3rd university degree and entered permanent employment. And I think it's with that kind of capacity behind you and that kind of thinking that the same will happen here. Pull in the communities, because a lot of these communities, you will need to train them. You need to sit them and put them through these training courses. But I also think if you look at the biodiversity and our province in its whole, I think there's huge discussion with the new Khoisan bill with people who want to practice their culture to train them on the importance of protecting the biodiversity, not harvesting all the plants, harvesting some of the plants and replant, etc. But then also enter into the tourism market. I think there's a huge space for that, and Cape Nature will work with these communities, because that's how we're going to get them out of organized crime. You must give them something better to do. And we will work very closely with Cape Nature and the Department of Environmental Affairs. Thank you.
Honourable members, I see Member Stoffel.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you for the response, MEC. MEC, what other measures are in place to prevent further degradation of wetlands due to the urban and development, pollution, and illegal land use activity? Yes, we're quite aware about the measures that is there, but what other measures is there also?
See the Minister.
Chairperson, we're open for ideas, things that we play with. Unpopular things, setback lines, is something that now again is going to come to the forefront, because actually we've got our policy that you're actually not allowed to build within 32 meters of a river and around the estuary, etc. And municipalities will need to start also to understand if they approve those plans and there's damages to that property, I think there's a case to make that they also part of the to be found guilty. So we've done a huge exercise to do the setback lines throughout the province. It's not only to the estuaries, but speaks also to our coast, our river systems, etc. Alien clearing is a big issue for all of us to protect our estuaries. Pollution, we're busy with the alien clearing program, but we've also learned now, and yeah, to be honest, I don't know why we haven't picked this up earlier or myself, but you can now see with this flood, one of the big problems with alien vegetation, alien clearing, is that we clear the alien plants, but it seems like we just stack it at the op die rande van die riviere, and when there's a flood like now, all those plants and things get washed down the river system, it blocks the bridges, and then the bridge will go, etc. So we will need to look at technology like chippers and things like that. So if you take out the alien clearing plants, that you also put them through a chipper and get them out of the way. We had the same with the rooikraans in Betty's Bay, Hermanus, with December's fires. So there's lots more that we can do. Obviously, the budget is a problem, and therefore the 150 million will go also a far way to help us to support these kinds of water-intensive programs, because there's a benefit on the water side as well as protecting our infrastructure and our people long term. Thank you, Chair.
Honourable Bryant.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Minister has spoken about many of the role players involved in wetlands and surrounding communities, but a big aspect is also private landowners who have wetlands on their properties. Minister, how do we compel or at least encourage private landowners to take responsibility for the maintenance and protection of their own wetlands?
I think it's a crucial question. Just by putting the question, I think we need to sit down with Cape Nature, because we do have our contracts that we sign with the farmers on protecting certain pieces of their land that's a high value in biodiversity. I think we must do the same with the estuaries, because at the end of the day, the estuaries protect the water sources. I think that can become a crucial program over the years. And remember the program that we entered into. I think the next generation, our children will benefit from that, because we're building this whole network and linking the farms so that game can start to roam again, etc. But to focus on wetlands, I think there's great incentives that we can put on the table for the farmers, that if they've got a certain area and they manage it, wetlands, and please, if you know of some that we can tackle and make a pilot, let's do that. and give them a 0 rating on their taxes on that piece of land, because they also do us a favor. But I think that's a crucial question, and I think there's more work for us as a department to do as well as Cape Nature. Thank you, Chair.
I see no additional hands. We now proceed to new questions, to the second question and the new questions, and I see the Minister, Minister Maree.
Dankie Deputy Speaker, dankie aan agbare van Minnen vir die vraag. During numerous community engagements where concerns were raised regarding the negative effects of not having permanently appointed station commanders, commitments were made on public platforms by the senior leadership of the SAPS in the province to prioritize the filling of these posts, including General Patekile. During these engagements, I consistently emphasized the need to urgently fill all vacant managerial positions at station level in order to ensure stability, improve accountability, and strengthen service delivery within affected precincts. I also noted that during his budget speech, the Acting Minister of Police committed to prioritize fixing the top 50 murder stations in the country as part his turnaround strategy, and that would include the appointment of permanent station commanders. Thank you.
I recognize the member who posed the question, Member van Minnen.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. If I can please, through you, ask a question to the Honourable Minister whether any specific reasons have been provided by SAPS and the Provincial Commissioner for the high vacancy rates in the worst affected SAPS stations. I thank you.
I recognize the Minister.
Thank you for the follow-up question. The answer is short, no.
I recognize the Honourable Nkwensu.
Very much. Thank you very much to Honourable van Minnen for posing the question, and also the MEC for responding to the question. Here's my follow-up question. On the engagements which you are reporting that you embarked on, were there any timelines perhaps reported, and which are those positions, and whether the position of the provincial head of intelligence was a part of it? And what about, you also made the point that the position of the provincial commissioner is also included. When is he leaving, and when will the position be filled? Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Before the Minister answers, honourable members, I do not want to stop the member from asking, but please note in terms of the rule, it's one follow-up. So I will allow the Minister to then respond as she sees fit, but it's one follow-up question, not multiple questions connected. Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Honourable, for the questions. It was specifically the station commanders. We did speak about our the intelligence, head of intelligence. I have to say that General Patekile and General Voskuil is waiting for the okay to appoint that person. And then for the second question, the process is in, ek gaan nou Afrikaans sê, die proses is aan die gang to appoint a new, it's a work in progress. Yeah, it's a work in process. So, and he's leaving the end of June. Thank you.
I recognize the Honourable van Minnen.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. We're now in a new financial year for SAPS. Have any timelines been communicated to the province regarding the filling of these vacant positions for station commanders? I thank you.
Thank you. We did not get timelines from them. We gave them timelines, and we follow up regularly with our meetings. But so far, some of the timelines haven't been met. Thank you.
Final question, I recognize Honourable Nkwensu.
Thank you very much, MEC. Do you think that is the relationship between these vacancies and the violent crime in the province?
Yes, I do think so. Thank you for the question. Yes, I do think so. Even though we think that boots on the ground, more boots on the ground won't solve the problem, but it is definitely, according to my own perception and what I see on the ground, there is definitely a relationship. Thank you.
Honorable members, that concludes question number 2. I again recognize Minister Bradell, question 3.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson, and thank you to Honourable Member Brian for the question. To enable a dignified life for all so that residents have access to essential services and opportunities to live safely and healthy, the Department conducted research into a basket of dignity. This refers to the quantity of basic services, water, electricity, sanitation, and refuge removal required to ensure a dignified life for its residents. Specific to the question, in terms of the national framework, the quantum of water is 6 kiloliters per month and electricity 50 kilowatt per month for indigent households. However, the research proposes that the amount increase to between 9 to 15 kiloliters of water and between 75 to 100 kilowatt of electricity per month for indigent households. B part, this approach will improve the quality of life and opportunities for indigent households in the Western Cape by increasing basic services allocations to levels that genuinely support a dignified life for indigent households. Amongst others, they should then have reliable access to adequate water and electricity without being forced to resort to unsafe and more costly alternatives. This will also directly support better health outcomes, economic participation, and social inclusion for the most vulnerable households in the Western Cape and improve personal dignity. However, the proposal for providing additional free basic services should not be taken in isolation, as there is financial sustainability of municipalities to consider. To address this, the research proposed alternative revenue streams. Thank you, Chair.
I recognize the member who posed the question, Member Brian.
Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker. It was a comprehensive response, and I think it's covered the points that I wanted to ask. But I just want to find out from the Minister, is he aware of any similar programs elsewhere in the country that are running as effectively as this one?
Honourable Chair, Honourable Deputy Speaker, no, I'm not aware. This was research that we've done through the university of Stellenbosch. I'm a firm believer that governance role is to see to it that all residents can have a dignified life. And actually, the package of the dignity basket, we package it on our functions, so it's water, electricity, sanitation, etc. But agriculture will need to step up and say, what food do we need to put in, etc., so that we can have the broader scope. I think where we get criticized and where people's got some sort of a block is that we're not willing to look at the benefits. First of all, to acknowledge that people need more. Secondly, that if we can get, and especially on electricity, if we can get to a stage, now Stellenbosch municipality already, Overstrand, will give 100 units of electricity. Now, if we can get municipalities to go to 150 kilowatts of electricity, you can then accommodate your children. Your children can start to learn on the computers. They can do their homework, get them off the streets. And I personally think the question is actually, can we afford not to invest in dignity? Because now we must pick our children up when they become gangsters in the police stations, in the court system, while if we can get them to study, etc., they can work themselves out of poverty. They can study. If you've got qualifications, you can enter the job market easily, etc. The same with water. Unhealthy water, people end up in our clinics, they end up in our hospitals. If there's clean water, drinking water, then we will save at the end of the cycle. I think we put too much money at the end of the cycle, and we need to turn the system if we really want to get people out of poverty, but it's still open for debate. I get criticized a lot on social media also because people just see their current municipal bill and they say, what is this going to cost us? I really think we need a mature debate on this, and I think it's possible so that we put in now the money and then save it at the end of the day. But also, you would have picked up that my colleague in Treasury has also touched this thing close to both our hearts, that we need to get this debate going and make this work. Also on a national level, talk to our national colleagues, and then also look, and Treasury is going to play a huge role in dismantling a bit this dignify or this equitable share formula and the equitable share allocations that we get, because currently I think, now I'm going to guess, but I think there's around about 2.5 million people on the books, but national is paying out 11 million. And they're also going to enforce that discipline so that the people that really fall in the category of poor households, that they get what they deserve, and other people must pay. So there's two policies in the municipal space that's going to become very important. Credit control policy, where we need to get people that can pay to pay, and the indigent policy where we help people who cannot pay to also have a dignified life. Thank you, Chair.
Parliament is working. So let me also say this. A minister, kindly refer to the chair and speak to the chair, to Member Bryant, so that we just maintain that particular rule. Member Stoffel, you have a follow-up? I recognize Member Stoffel.
Baie dankie, Speaker. MEC, ek wil net weet, hoe word die spesifieke dienste en voordele in die mandjie bepaal in onstabiele munisipaliteite?
Dis 'n moeilike en ek hoop ek verstaan die vraag reg. Of jy in 'n onstabiele munisipaliteit is of 'n stabiele munisipaliteit, jy het die reg tot 'n menswaardige lewe. En dis, ons moet hierdie goed buite dit sien. Elke inwoner moet die reg hê, en dit is wat ons gaan bepaal het. En eintlik as ons die dokument kyk, daar's eintlik 4 mandjies. Daar's 'n mandjie vir as jy geen inkomste het nie, en dit is die mandjie waarvan ons nou praat, dignified life. Dan is daar 'n mandjie as jy inkomste het, wat kan jy bekostig? Moet 'n sekere kategorie inkomste nie teen kosprysdienste kry nie. Dat jy wins maak op hulle, dan kan jy by jou tweede en derde kategorie gaan. Maar dit kan nie afhang van of jou munisipaliteit of dit 'n well-run, 'n goeie bestuurde munisipaliteit is of nie. Dit kan nie bepaal nie. Ons skuld dit vir elke inwoner om 'n menswaardige lewe te kan hê. So, die navorsing wys dat jy 10 kiloliter water eintlik per huishouding nodig. Dit werk uit, my som reg kry is 50 liter water per dag per persoon min of meer. En die groot debat kom by elektrisiteit, wat ons weet elektrisiteit het duur geraak, 150 eenhede, so munisipaliteite gaan so 'n bietjie terugdruk. Ek dink ons kan nog altyd die saak maak dat aan die einde gaan ons spaar daardeur. So dit is waarmee ons werk. Die bestuur van die munisipaliteit is op 'n ander been. Ons werk baie nou saam. Julle sal hoor dat die minister, ek wil nie maar ek kan maar namens haar brek, is dat as hulle doen wat hulle moet doen, dan gaan Kannaland kom in 2 jaar weens tesouriese goeie werk, dat hulle van dit 'n befondste begroting op die tafel kan sit. So ons moet daardie dissiplines indwing. En dan is ons ook besig om etiese waardes deur ons vennote kursus aan te bied vir munisipaliteite, vir politici en vir amptenare, en ons sal met die nuwe generasie wat na 4 November verkies word, weer daardie kursus doen, want ek dink etiese besluitneming is krities om te sorg dat ons munisipaliteite nie daar val waar die agbare lid Stoffel na verwys nie. Dankie, agbare Deputy Speaker.
I again recognize the Honourable Stoffel.
Thank you, Speaker. Baie dankie, MEC, vir die terugvoer. My volgende vraag is, MEC, hoe sal die departement meet of hierdie ingryping huishoudelike welstand verbeter en armoede verminder?
Maar Speaker, om eerlik te wees, ek dink nie as 'n maatstaf, daar's nie 'n meetinstrument waarmee jy dit net kan meet nie. Natuurlik deur navorsing, maar dit sal ook jare vat voordat ons seker daar uitkom. Ek dink dis doodlogies dat jy outomaties 'n lewensverandering sal kan sien as daar 150 eenhede in elke huishouding is wat jy kan bekostig en 10 kiloliter water. Dit spreek net tot menslikheid. Dit is wat jy sal sien as jy in die gemeenskappe, die agbare stoffels is ook 'n persoon wat daar loop in daardie gemeenskappe. So ek dink dit is 'n logiese gevolg. Natuurlik sal ons oor langtermyn deur ons sensusopnames kan jy nou die vrae begin vra en jy kan daai navorsing begin doen. Ek dink ons moet eers in huis die debat hê en dan die formule uitwerk sodat ons wat al die munisipaliteite sal nie dadelik kan spring na 150 eenhede, ons sal dit moet infaseer. So jy sal gaan na 75 eenhede toe en dan sê jy gaan na 100 eenhede toe, etc. En dan sal ons ook met tesourie moet sit om te kyk nasionaal, hoe kan hulle kompenseer vir daardie gapings en miskien weer die debat op die tafel sit vir projek konsolideer wat ons gehad het in 2000, waar jy jou werklike arm munisipaliteite afsonderlik hanteer met 'n toekenning sodat hulle na die armes van die armes kan omsien. Dankie Speaker.
In the absence of any further questions, we proceed to question number 4. I recognize the Honourable Minister, Minister Meyer.
Dankie agbare Speaker, soos jy sê die parlement werk. In terms of the question 4 from Honourable Member Nkontlo, I want to thank her for the question. The quarter 1 in 2026, the South African unemployment rate was about 32.7%, while the Western Cape recorded a significant lower unemployment rate of 19.6%. At the national level, the total employment declined by 345,000, while the Western Cape similarly experienced a decline of about, as Honourable Member Nkontlo mentioned, a decline of 24,000 jobs between quarter 4 in 2025 and quarter 1 in 2026. This pattern, Honourable Deputy Speaker, clearly indicates that the decline in employment in the province forms part of a broader nationwide contraction rather than being driven by a province-specific labour market challenges. The extent of the decline in the employment reflects persistent labour market challenges in both the South African as well as the provincial labour markets. And in addition, Honourable Deputy Speaker, we have seen also that the job losses specifically in the Western Cape were broad-based, affecting both the formal as well as the informal sectors. The formal sector employment declined by approximately 20,000, while the informal sector lost about 13,000 jobs over the same period. This suggests that the weakening labour market conditions were not confined to a singular segment of the economy, but were widespread across different types of employment. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
I recognize the member who posed the question, Member Nkontlo.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Honourable Minister. We miss you in the House. Having said that, Minister, I just want to understand in the growth for jobs targets, given the fact that we are in 2026 now, and there would have been a plan in terms of the number of jobs by 2030. So if you look at the problem of the need, not in education, not in informal employment or training, what is the performance of the provincial economy? Because I think for youth in particular, it's important to track that number against the target.
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Member about the target specifically in relation to the growth for jobs as well as the impact on the youth. What we are seeing, Honourable Deputy Speaker, in addition to the seasonal factors, which are likely to have to contribute to the observed decline too. We have seen employment typically weakens, as we know, in the first quarter of the year, following by an increased hiring during the fourth quarter, associated with festive season demand. We see this on a year-by-year basis. I think Honourable Member Nkontlo also understand this. And as a result, some of the job losses observed in quarter one in 2026 can be attributed to unwinding of temporary or seasonal employment opportunities. And I think it might be interested for the House to note where this contraction happened is specifically in the formal sector, about 20,000. In terms of the informal sector, about 13,000. Private sector households, about 9,000. So the total, if you add up this is private households, there was a positive reflection on that. So in total, it's about a 24,000, as she has correctly mentioned. Certainly, we will be watching the impact on this, on the growth for jobs over a period, because we have set a very ambitious target of about 600,000 new jobs that we need to create in terms of the growth for jobs. And that's why we are working very closely and very strategically in terms of our export-led growth, because we know if we increase our exports by 5%, we will have a significantly increase in employment, particularly in the young and those who are not in education and training, as he specifically mentioned. She will also know that I have mentioned previously in this house that if we increase our export by 5%, we will have about 22,900 new jobs. So we are concerned about this. This is quarter one. I think it is also in terms of the cyclical nature, but I'm also now more concerned about what we can see in the next 2 quarters, specifically looking at the impact of the war in the Middle East, as well as the major floods. And I've listened very carefully to the debates and the comments that people have made. The impact is devastating, and we will see certainly that coming through in terms of the figures for the next quarter. So yes, I am concerned, and therefore we have also recalibrated some of our figures for the employment because when the tariffs kicked in, our initial plans was to create 1 trillion rand economy in terms of the G4J. That is no longer possible because we are a major export region and a tariff is a form of taxation, and that will certainly impact on our export, and it will certainly impact on the impact of the war, the diesel, food inflation, and all of this. So I have asked my team to recalibrate our targets, given what is happening in the world, both in tariffs and in terms of the war in the Middle East. It is devastating what is happening around the world, specifically in terms of global supply chain management. So I think these are real things, and I want to thank the Honourable Member. We will specifically looking at the impact of youth and focus more specifically on youth, targeting the youth in terms of employment creation. And that is specifically the focus of one of the priority focus areas of the G4J. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize Honourable Masipa.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for the answer. Minister, economic analysts consistently point out that first quarter labour data across South Africa is traditionally dragged down by seasonality. You always often quote you, I might quote you incorrectly, state that you don't want the Western Cape to do well, you want the whole of the country to do well. Western Cape consistently has the lowest unemployment data in the country. What sets us apart from the other province in terms of job creation that they lack? Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Firstly, thank you, Honourable Masipa, for the question. I think it is firstly to understand what were the changes in the Western Cape in terms of the labour force survey, because the figures are very clear in terms of, and when you deal with economic growth, job numbers, although we discuss a quarter-on-quarter approach, it is more relevant to discuss the quarter one of 2026 on a year-on-year basis. In other words, look at quarter one in 2025 and see what has happened. And if you look at the year-on-year changes in the Western Cape employment by sector, this is what has happened. We added jobs in the category of trade. 81,000 jobs were added in the first quarter. Construction, 13,000 jobs were added. Agriculture, 5,000 jobs in the Western Cape were added. Private households, 4,000 jobs were added. Utility, 2,000 jobs were added. But to come specifically to the issues that Honourable Member Mkontlo raised, we lost 1,000 jobs in the mining. In finance and other business services, we lost 7,000 jobs. We lost in the first quarter, as you rightly also mentioned, in terms of the seasonality, 7,000 jobs in transport. We lost about in the community and social services, 30,000 jobs, and very sadly also in the manufacturing, about 37,000 jobs. What set us apart? I believe, and I am absolutely determined, that I don't want the Western Cape to succeed. I want South Africa to succeed. For South Africa to succeed, I think we must learn lessons from across the country, and our lessons for the rest of the country is very clear. Stable government, an ethical government, practice of good governance, focus on key critical areas like what we do in the Western Cape. We believe attracting foreign direct investment is for us very important. That's why we hosted a Western Cape Investment Summit. We attracted 50 billion rand, and we don't believe in just having a investment summit of like a talk shop. That's why we had also a deal book. We also had all our projects through a process of due diligence through the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So that's the first thing that I think we can share with the rest of the country, is to host a foreign direct investment strategy through economic diplomacy. 90% of my time and that of the Premier and that of Minister Bartman is now more and more in the space of promoting economic diplomacy, because that is how you attract foreign direct investment. About a week ago, I met the European Parliament, the chairperson of the Trade Committee, because we believe trade relationships is for us very important. And the biggest single block in terms of trade in the world comes from the European Union. It also, in terms of the biggest investment as a block, comes from the European Union. So that is what we believe in, building solid relationships. But coming back to South Africa, 96% of all the products that South Africa export to the European Union, Deputy Chair, 96% of all South Africa's products that we export to the European Union are free from tariffs. And so the second thing that I believe
Kindly conclude, Minister.
Okay. The second thing that I think what I want to mention is perhaps to drive economic growth through infrastructure-led growth. And you have seen
Thank you so much, Minister. The time has expired.
That is
Thank
sad,
you.
but I'll have a cup of tea with Honourable Member Mkontlo.
Thank you so much, honourable members. That is the end of questions for oral reply. Outstanding replies will be printed in Hansard. We proceed in terms of Rule 145. There will now be an opportunity for members' statements, and I recognize the DA.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. As we reflect on Child Protection Week, which form part of the broader Foster Care Awareness Month, observed in May, we are reminded of our shared responsibility to protect society's most vulnerable, our children. Foster care is a lifeline for children who have been removed from unsafe, abusive, or neglectful circumstances and placed into the care of loving and responsible foster parents. In the Western Cape, Deputy Speaker, the Department of Social Development plays a central role in assessing, approving, and supporting foster care placements. Through dedicated social workers, the department ensures that children are placed in safe environments and that ongoing supervision and psychosocial support are provided. This work, however, is carried by professionals who are often overburdened and working under significant pressure. We must also acknowledge the invaluable contribution of foster parents and caregivers who open their homes and hearts to children in need. Alongside them, social workers remain the backbone of the system, providing assessments, court reports, reunification services, and continuous monitoring of the child's well-being. Deputy Speaker, yet foster care does not operate in isolation. It requires strong intergovernmental cooperation. The Department of Social Development, SASSA, and Home Affairs must work seamlessly together to ensure that children have access to the documentation, foster care grants, and essential services they are entitled to. Too often, delays in documentation, expired foster care orders, and administrative bottlenecks interrupt the flow of support to children who cannot afford to wait. In the Western Cape, thousands of children are currently placed in foster care, and thousands more benefit from the foster care child grant. While these interventions provide critical financial and social support, the system continues to face challenges that require urgent
Honourable
attention.
member, your time has expired. Please take your seat.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. I recognize the ANC. The ANC. Are you waiting for the podium? Honourable Adams.
Correction, the chief whip did pronounce you as deputy speaker. I don't know when you were what you call it, but
that is not a point of order.
I was just out. I'm scared that when I came back, you were someone our deputy.
The deputy speaker was in the chair minutes before you came in. Honourable Said, you may continue.
Okay. Now, thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Today, the ANC raises a serious concern about the integrity of this legislature's disciplinary appeal system and the responsibility of the Premier to ensure that this province leads by example on accountability and ethical governance. The current framework, as per the Code of Conduct, creates a serious problem. The Speaker serves as the chairperson of the Appeals Committee, participates in determining appeals, and then presides over the House that must ultimately receive and process matters flowing from that same appeals process. The Code of Conduct compromises the Speaker's neutrality, no fault of his own. This is not merely a technical rules issue. It goes to the heart of public confidence in this legislature and in the DA-led Western Cape government's commitment to clean, fair, and accountable governance. The Premier cannot speak about good governance, accountability, and institutional integrity while remaining silent when the very same systems meant to hold public representatives, including himself, accountable, are open to serious questions of fairness and independence. We believe that no democratic institution can afford a code of conduct that creates the perception that one office bearer can be both a participant and overseer of the same process. We therefore call on the Premier, as both the leader of government and the DA caucus, to indicate whether he supports an urgent review of this flawed appeals framework and whether he agrees that the matter must be referred to the Conduct Committee or the Rules Committee for the relevant provisions to be amended. The people of the Western Cape deserve a legislature that protects accountability, not one where rules can shield those in power from proper scrutiny. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Syed. Honourable members, I will revert to Hansard, and I will, before on that statement just delivered, as you're all aware, and it is publicly known, there's matters before the Appeals Committee, and I will take guidance from the legal advisor of Parliament and the table staff, and I will come back to the House with that ruling with regards to that statement just being delivered. I recognize the PA.
Speak to me, please. Altyd.
Honorable Adams, are you ready? Speak to me, please, Honorable Adams.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I move about notice that the House notes that historical.
Honorable Adams, we're still doing statements, not motions. Member statements. Do you have a member statement?
Yes, sir.
You
Sorry,
can deliver
sorry,
your statement.
Speaker, we as the Patriotic Alliance, we want the House to note the floods that's going on in areas such as Beaufort West, at Leogamka, where the rivers are being overflooded and the dams. We want the House to note die seerkry van ons mense in Thembalethu, in Bongolethu, in Knysna, in Ronley en natuurlik in die ander parte van George en in die Garden Route ook. Speaker, ons roep op die huis en die Weskaapse government om seker te maak dat ons mense die nodige noodbehuising kry so gou as moontlik, want hulle is besig om swaar te kry in die backyards waar hulle bly en soos ek vroeër ook gesê het, hulle lewe ongelukkig huidiglik in haglike omstandighede met water wat deur hulle huise gaan. Speaker, ek wil ook aan die premier in sy absence vra dat hy die probleem van die asbesdakke escalate na die nasionale regering toe sodat die ou asbesdakke, die mense wat in dit bly, dat hulle gehelp kan word met die dakke wat seer gekry het met die val van bome en so aan gedurende die sterk winde wat in George en in die omliggende areas in Knysna, Oudtshoorn en Mosselbaai en asook in Beaufort West gebeur het die afgelope tyd met die sterk winde en floods. Speaker, dit is 'n baie sad tyd vir ons mense want ons mense kan nie.
Honorable Adams, your time has expired. Thank you very much. I recognize the DA.
Honourable Speaker, the recent events in Mossel Bay, Kwaba, have left our community shaken and saddened. What began as a protest against illegal foreigners has unfortunately resulted in violence, loss of life, and the displacement of innocent people. 3 people have lost their lives, 55 shacks have been destroyed, and many families have been left without shelter. As we reflect on these tragic events, I want to urge every resident to exercise extreme caution and restraint. We cannot allow frustration and anger to lead to violence and vigilantism. Residents have a constitutional right to peaceful protest and to voice their concerns on matters affecting their communities. Peaceful protest is a cornerstone of our democracy and an important way for citizens to make their voices heard. However, that right does not extend to violence, intimidation, destruction of property, or the targeting of individuals based on suspicion or perception. South Africa is a constitutional democracy governed by the rule of law. There are lawful processes and procedures that must be followed when concerns arise. It is the responsibility of law enforcement agencies and the relevant government departments to investigate, verify identities, and take action where laws have been broken. No individual group has the right to act as judge, jury, and executioner. The tragic deaths reported in Kwaba serve as a painful reminder of what can happen when assumptions are made. We have already seen allegations that one victim may have been mistaken for a foreign national because of the language he spoke. Innocent people can easily become victims when communities take the law into their own hands. We must remember that behind every person is a family, a mother, a father, a child, or a loved one. I therefore call on all residents to remain calm, cooperate with law enforcement authorities, and allow investigations to take their course. Our strength as a community
Honourable
lies.
Member, your time has expired. Thank you very much. I recognize the EFF. The EFF. If not, the NCC.
Dankie Speaker. Speaker, die NCC is vandag baie clear in terme van die violence op die Kaapse vlakte. Dis clear dat die violence gaan nie gestop word onder 'n DA-regering in die Wes-Kaap nie. Op 13 Februarie 2026 het die premier besoek afgelê aan Rheinmetall, is 'n maatskappy net 30 km in Makassar hiervan af wat wapens vervaardig en wapens wat aan Israel verkoop word om kinders en vrouens te moor. Nou as jy as premier wat die hoof is van 'n government weet van die dinge, dan sê dit vir my, jy gee nie om vir 'n kind wat deur 'n kop geskiet word nie, wat gee jy nog om vir ons breinkinders op die Kaapse vlakte wat so sterf? En ons wil, as die NCC wil ons 'n beroep maak met die optrede van die premier wat 'n plek gaan besoek het wat wapens verkoop aan Israel. Wil ons as die NCC vandag duidelik sê vir die mense van die Weskaap, ons kinders gaan nog daagliks sterf onder die governance van die DA, want jy sit met 'n leierskap wat nie omgee vir kinders wat doodgaan nie. En dit is 'n bewys dat met die optrede van die premier wat self so ver gegaan het om 'n plek te gaan besoek wat daardie wapens gemaak word wat kinders doodskiet. Dankie speaker.
Thank you very much. I recognize the ANC.
Thank you, Speaker. The DA lacks any sense, let alone empathy, to the livelihoods of the Black communities, whose misery is an engineered manifestation of the apartheid legacy, as it was shown in this House. The enforcement of existing DA-led municipal planning bylaws against homeowners operating unzoned house shops stand testimony to this brutality and has drawn an uproar from the Cape Flats. These are home-based enterprises, Hayes Venkels, Isbaza shops, being threatened with fines of up to 800,000 and even imprisonment for operating small home-based businesses. The home-based businesses have a long history in the townships as spaces of self-reliance, thriving entrepreneurship to provide access to goods and services at affordable prices to locals. Born out of survival and resilience from segregation, townships were dumping grounds of cheap labor to sustain the white economy. This is no coincidence, no accident of history, but a deliberate apartheid geography and spatial design that benefited whiteness and protected the white sector of the South African society, who to date benefits from clean, orderly and thriving suburbs. The DA has done little for 20 years governing the Cape to transform townships into thriving economic spaces. Instead, they remain killing fields and extortion bases. The draconian bylaws and compliance environment of the city further burdens these communities, showing a city with resources to criminalize the survival strategies of the poor. No government has the legitimacy to use a stick of regulation and compliance over township enterprises, whilst oblivion and refusing to redress the imbalances of the past that strangled the potential of these townships, as it was shown by the Premier and MEC Bredel here in this House. The ANC believes that government should support and develop the informal economy, not wage war against it.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I recognize the DA.
Honourable Speaker, the DA's resounding victory in Mfuleni Ward 28 in Gauteng is a clear precursor to the sweeping DA wins that will follow in the local government elections this November. And Honourable Speaker, just to put it into context, in 2004, the DA was competing with spoilt ballots. And the ANC had a majority of over 90% in this ward, and now it's a DA ward. It's an indication that all across the country, the ANC's grip on the historic support base has slipped due to its terrible record of delivery, their mismanagement of the economy, and of course, their love affair of corruption. Speaker, I would like the House to note that this victory is the first of many that will follow. The DA has shown wherever it governs well. Our people are tired of empty promises, water and electricity outages, and refuse piling up. Only where the DA governs do we see the building blocks of prosperity being put into place. I call on all the people of the Western Cape and South Africa to take the opportunity on offer this November and make their voices heard. To do so, you must be registered to vote. You can check your status online at check.da.org.za. Quick commercial break. And it's important to note that you can only vote where you are registered. If you want your municipalities to work like they do in the Western Cape, if you want your local economy to grow, if you want accountable, transparent, and clean governance, register to vote DA this November, the new historical force in a second transition in South Africa towards greatness. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Order. I recognize the Freedom Front Plus.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, municipalities are powerful institutions deriving their executive authority directly from the national constitution. They are local institutions of first instance in land planning and land use planning. However, many of these powerful institutions are at the forefront of service delivery failures, corruption, financial mismanagement. Service delivery failures results in loss of public confidence in our local government institutions. Despite this, there is a proposal for the amendment to the Land Use Planning Act that intends giving municipalities even greater discretion in processes relating to land use related applications by removing existing detailed procedural minimum safeguards to which they must comply in this province. The Freedom Front Plus believes adequate public participation and inclusion, meaningful engagement is an important cornerstone of our democracy. And the Freedom Front Plus stands with ratepayers, with our voters out there, with the electorate who wants to be heard in Parliament and wants to be heard whenever there is public participation regarding any matter that affects them or the values of their properties. We therefore call on this House to ensure that there is additional safeguards for the protection of our public's voice in Parliament and in municipalities and their planning. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. I recognize Al-Jamar.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Al-Jama'ah extends its heartfelt congratulations to all the Hujjaj who have successfully completed the sacred pilgrimage of Hajj and are returning home safely to South Africa. Hajj is one of the most profound acts of worship in Islam, embodying sacrifice, patience, unity, humility, and devotion to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We commend our Hujjaj for undertaking this spiritually transformative journey and for representing our communities with dignity and excellence while in the Holy Lands. As our pilgrims reunite with their families and communities, we welcome them back with warm hearts and sincere du'as that their Hajj may be accepted as Hajj Mabrur, a pilgrimage filled with blessings, forgiveness, and reward. We also take this opportunity to acknowledge the sacrifices made by families and loved ones who supported the Hujjaj throughout this important journey. May the lessons of Hajj continue to inspire greater compassion, unity, discipline, and service within our society. Al-Jama'ah prays for the continued safety and health and spiritual steadfastness of all returning pilgrims and ask that the blessings of this sacred season uplift not only the Hujjaj, but the entire Ummah and nation at large. I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much. I recognize the ACDP.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, today, as we observe the second last day of Child Protection Week, the ACDP in the Western Cape brings to this House the heartbreaking story of learners who chose to die by suicide rather than being bullied at schools. Who will ever forget in February 2025 when 14-year-old Nayar Smith, a grade 9 learner, took his own life? In March this year, 8-year-old Emma Bongo Natembo Puelela died by her own hand. Both were victims of bullying. Can we think of the despair that compelled these learners to take their own lives? Their untimely passing is a stark reminder that bullying has devastating effects and life-altering consequences. Mr. Speaker, bullying at schools must be stamped out completely. I know in this House we spoke about it on numerous occasions, but bullying continues in our schools. Every child must be taught in environments that are safe, that are supportive, and that is free of fear, intimidation, and violence. Speaker, bullying takes many forms, including physical assault, verbal abuse, social exclusion, cyberbullying, and ongoing harassment. These emotional scars often remain hidden until it's too late.
Honourable Member, your time has expired. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Speaker.
I recognize Good. If not, I recognize the DA.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Since the severe weather that affected large parts of the Western Cape last month, the DA-led Western Cape has been engaging closely with Eskom leadership throughout daily updates on the restoration efforts in the hardest hit communities. Progress has been made with 92% of affected areas now successfully reconnected to the electricity grid. This reflects the sustained work of the technical teams operating under challenging conditions to restore essential services. However, we fully acknowledge the continued frustration and hardship experienced by households, businesses, and farmers in areas where these outages remains in place. We understand that electricity is not a luxury, but a basic necessity. Extended outages therefore place a real and immediate risk and burden on families and communities. Remaining restoration work continues across parts of the Western Cape, Cape Winelands, Garden Route, and Overberg, with repairs processing as infrastructure is restored and systems are re-energized in phases. Incidents of cable theft in some of the affected areas are strongly condemned, and they continue to delay repair work and undermine the restoration efforts. Communities are urged to report such criminal activity to law enforcement immediately. The impact of these outages on daily life has been significant, and there remains a commitment and ongoing engagement with Eskom and the relevant stakeholders to ensure clear communication and full restoration of electricity services as quick as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, in terms of Rule 145, subsection 6, I now give one or more members of the executive present an opportunity to respond to member statements for not more than 5 minutes collectively, if they so wish. Does not seem that there's any responses needed, and that brings us to the end of member statements. Honourable Said, is that a point of order?
Yes, Speaker, no, and it's not a response on behalf of the executive. I'm in the opposition, in case there's any confusion. But just, Honourable Speaker, I noted the remarks that you have made regarding going to the legal advice. But just as a precursor, and I don't want to create a ruction by calling you to order. I think it's just as a point of advice. In fact, just to clarify, and I think it's quite clear I was speaking conceptually on the notion of impartiality and fair process, not looking at all at the content of the appeal whatsoever, purely on the makeup of the committee, which was made public and which was 80 seats. So just want to again make it clear that I'm not speaking at all to the content of the appeal. That's a debate for another day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It would be remiss of me not to respond. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, I have in writing informed the Chief Whip of the Opposition that the only way to amend the Code of Conduct in its current form is by a resolution of the House. So that has been communicated. And I also want to emphasize that members, in the interest of the integrity of the process, can I please caution members to not make statements that could potentially undermine the integrity of the appeals process. So unless directed otherwise by the House, the appeals committee in its current form, in its current act, and as determined by the act, will proceed. We now move on to notices of Honorable Side.
No, Speaker, that is noted, and we have taken that advice, and we'll be following that advice, of course. Of course, when we make political statements, we provide a context for the following of that particular advice.
Thank you very much. With that being said, honorable members, we move on to notices of motions in terms of Rule 151. All notices of motions by members are required to be delivered to the Secretary for placing it on the order paper. These motions have been duly submitted and published on the order paper below the line. We now move on to motions without notice in terms of Rule 150. And I would like to inform you that in terms of Standing Rule 150, pertaining to motions without notice, condolences and congratulatory were submitted to the Programming Authority prior to this plenary on the 2nd of June 2026. Members are also reminded that motions without notice pertaining to congratulatory and condolences will not be allowed in this sitting that have not been processed by the Programming Authority. I have been informed that in the Programming Authority meeting of the 2nd of June 2026, political parties submitted the names of honourable members in the desired order of speaking and who had wished to move a motion without notice in the sitting of the House. I will therefore, just for noting and for the purposes of the minutes, call out the honourable members whose names have accordingly been submitted and approved. Honourable members, the following members' motions have been recommended for approval by the Programming Authority as follows. Honourable B. Adams, Honourable A.P. Barnes, Honourable M.B. Ngensu, Honourable B. Stoffel, Honourable Ngensu, Honourable Ngensu, Honourable Johnson, Honourable Van Minnen, and Honourable Masipa, Honourable Johnson, Honourable Mackenzie, Honourable Minister Mackenzie, Honourable Masipa, Honourable Van Minnen, Honourable Masipa, Honourable Johnson, Honourable Masipa, Honourable Van Minnen, Honourable Van Minnen, and Honourable Brinkhuis. I now put the motions duly submitted and recommended for approval by the Programming Authority to the House. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The motions will appear in the minutes of the proceedings and in Hansard in each individual member's name as if the member had read them out aloud. I will now afford the opportunity to members to move motions without notice as per Standing Rule 150, subsection 3, subsection D, and this could also include motions without notice that were not approved by the Programming Authority meeting. Members, you are reminded that 30 minutes are allocated as per Standing Rule 150, subsection 3, subsection D, and the 30 minutes will start as soon as I get the list of the order. Thank you very much. The 30 minutes will start now, and I recognize the Honourable Adams.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I read the following motion without notice that the House notes the historical, cultural, and ancestral significance of Knoflokskraal to the Khoi community. Further notes the need to preserve indigenous heritage, social stability, lawful governance, and human dignity in the settlement. And therefore calls on the Western Cape government, together with the relevant stakeholders and community representatives, to explore the establishment of a lawful community trust or similar entity for Knoflokskraal in order to protect the ancestral and cultural rights of the Khoi community, to recognize and respect Khoi customary laws and traditions in line with the Constitution, to promote peace, lawful governance, and social order in the community, and to prevent arbitrary evictions or displacement while meaningful engagement processes are underway. I so far move, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Objection.
There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honourable Masipa. Order members. Honourable Masipa.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. Honorable Speaker, I move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, move without notice, that the House congratulates the City of Cape Town and Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis on the official opening of the Masiphumelele Gateway Market on Monday, 5th May 2026. Notes that this 20 million rands investments provides 57 informal traders with a safe, modern, and dignified trading environment, moving them from outdoor conditions into a facility equipped with kiosks, food preparation areas, seating and parking. Commends the city's commitment to fostering the township economy by including large kiosks specifically designed for light manufacturing, allowing small businesses in the Masiphumelele, Komeki, and Ocean View areas to scale their operations. Acknowledges that this development comes at a vital time as winter breaks, offering protection from the elements and restoring dignity to both traders and customers who previously operated in muddy and undignified conditions. Honorable Speaker, we celebrate this project as a benchmark for urban renewal and economic growth and resolves to continue supporting initiatives that provide local entrepreneurs with the infrastructure they need to build sustainable livelihoods and to contribute to the provincial economy. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Members. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honourable Masipa. Honourable Masipa, your next motion. Order. Honourable Masipa, you may continue.
Speaker, protect me from the
You are protected. I can only protect you if you sit down, but you were standing up. So can you continue?
Honorable Speaker, I move without notice on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that the House congratulates Alderman James Force and the Council of the City of Cape Town on the landmark approval of 693 new informal trading opportunities across the metropolitan area at a single meeting. Notes that this unprecedented achievement represents a significant advancement in strengthening Cape Town's public trading ecosystem, providing essential pathways for economic participation and entrepreneurship for hundreds of small business owners. Commends Alderman Force's proactive initiative to modernize the city's informal trading policies, aiming to ensure that trading spaces are not only safer and better managed, but also provide the dignity and infrastructure necessary for traders to support their families and grow their enterprises. and acknowledges the crucial role of the informal sector in driving inclusive economic growth, in creating local jobs, and in serving as a foundational pillar for businesses that contribute to the broader South African supply chain. I so move, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Masipa. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections, agreed to. I recognize Professor Mbombo. Order. Professor Mbombo. Professor Mbombo. I move on to Honorable Wessels.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes the extensive damage sustained by the Mitchells Pass near Ceres during the recent flood events. Further notes the swift response by the infrastructure teams, which restored access to the route within 3 days despite the challenging conditions, and acknowledging the ongoing efforts to rebuild and strengthen the road infrastructure to improve the resilience against future extreme weather events and ensure continued safety of road users. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Wessels. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections, agreed to. I recognize Honorable Masipa.
Honorable Speaker, I move without notice on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House recognizes the Democratic Alliance on its historic victory in Ward 28 in Emfulweni, Gauteng. Notes that this was a 100% township ward where conventional political wisdom claimed the DA could never win. Yet through consistent community engagement, principled leadership, and tireless activism, the DA grew from a 1.2% support base in 2004 to a victory in 2026 with 32.4% of the vote. Further notes the dramatic decline of the African National Congress in the ward from more than 90% support in the early 2000s to only 32.1% today, reflecting the growing rejection by residents of corruption, collapsing service delivery, unemployment, sewer spillage, broken infrastructure, and failed governance in Emfulweni. Acknowledges that this victory demonstrates that South Africans, regardless of race, geography, or historical voting patterns, are increasingly choosing a government that works, delivers services, creates opportunities, protect taxpayers' money, and respect the dignity of communities. And that government is of the Democratic Alliance. I so move, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Masipa. Honorable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honorable Van Minnen.
Thank you very much. I move without notice, but this House notes that an oversight visit to Lwandle Police Station on the 2nd of June 2026 revealed the severe impact of the South African Police Service's resource constraints on effective service delivery. That the House further notes with concern that station management reported 5 murders over a single weekend, underscoring the intensity of violent crime in the area. That the House recognizes that the policing burden in the Lwandle precinct far exceeds available resources, with a SAP's visible policing to population ratio of approximately 1 officer to 926 residents, in an area characterized by high levels of violent crime, including murder, robbery, drug-related offenses, and gender-based violence. That the House is further concerned that Lwandle Police Station currently has only 17 detectives, each carrying an average caseload of 141 cases, severely impacting investigative capacity and case outcomes. Therefore, the House calls on the South African Police Service and the national government to urgently upgrade Luandle Police Station to a full colonel level station, allocate additional personnel and vehicles, and prioritize the construction of a properly resourced and fully functional police station building for the province. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is no objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honourable Kaiser Philander.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes the critical role played by the social development sector in supporting vulnerable children, older persons, persons with disabilities, victims of gender-based violence, and families in distress. Further notes that millions of South Africans depend on social grants and social welfare services for their daily survival and well-being. Acknowledges the dedication of social workers, non-profit organizations, and government officials who continue to deliver these services despite ongoing challenges, and calls for the urgent appointment of a permanent National Minister of Social Development to provide leadership, oversight, and accountability in a sector that is fundamental to protecting the most vulnerable members of society. I so move. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Kaiser Philander. Honourable Members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honourable Masipa.
Honourable Speaker, I move without notice that this House knows the severe weather conditions that have affected the George municipality area over the past 2 days, resulting in flooding, road closures, electricity supply interruptions, and disruption to municipality services in George, Wilderness, Hawkville, and Uniondale. Further knows the efforts of municipal officials, emergency services, infrastructure teams, and disaster management personnel to respond to these challenges and support affected communities, and encourages residents to continue adhering to safety advisories, avoid flooded areas, and remain vigilant while adverse weather conditions persist. I so move.
Thank you very much. Order. Honourable Members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I move on to Honourable Johnson.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes the decision by the Western Cape Education Department to close all public ordinary schools and special needs schools in the Eden and Central Karoo district on 3 and 4 June 2026 due to the severe weather warnings and the risk posed by heavy rainfall. Further notes that this decision was taken in consultation with the Provincial Disaster Management Centre and in the interest of learner and teacher safety. Further acknowledges the proactive communication to affected schools and parents and welcomes the commitment to continuously monitor conditions and to reopen schools on 5 June 2026 where it is safe to do so. I so move.
Thank you very much. Honourable Members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable Members, before I move on, can I please pause the clock? The previous motion, Honourable Masipa, as delivered by you and as a decision of the House was taken on that motion, I will revert back to the House with regards to that motion because I am still needing to be informed if that motion was indeed submitted for being moved in this sitting. So I'll come back to the House with that, with regards to that. I recognize the Honourable Kaiser Philander.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes that June is observed as Youth Month, a time to reflect on the aspirations and challenges facing young people in our country. Further notes that many young people transitioning from foster care, child and youth care centers, and alternative care arrangements face significant barriers to further education, employment, and independent living. Recognizes the work of the Western Cape Department of Social Development and its partners in supporting vulnerable youth through developmental and empowerment programs, and calls on all spheres of government, the private sector, and civil society to strengthen opportunities that enable young people leaving care to build sustainable and independent futures. I so move. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honourable Professor Mbombo. I move on to Honourable Bryant.
Oh, sorry, Deputy Speaker. Sorry, Speaker, can I?
Yes, you may continue.
Yes, Madam Chair. Speaker, I hereby move that this House notes the participation of 48 learners from a City of Cape Town's Junior River Wardens program in a marine conservation and environmental education initiative ahead of World Ocean Day on the 8th of June 2026. Further notes that learners from Red River, Floriat, and Easterplaat primary schools worked alongside environmental organizations and city officials to learn about marine ecosystems, shark conservation, and ocean stewardship before participating in a beach cleanup, and acknowledges their contribution in removing more than 112 kilograms of litter from Lagoon Beach, helping to protect marine life and promote environmental responsibility among young people. I hereby move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable Kaiser Philander.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes the severe weather conditions and flooding experienced across the Western Cape between the 10th and the 13th of May 2026, which disrupted operations at several SASSA offices and service points. Further notes that despite infrastructure damage, power outages, and temporary relocations, contingency measures enabled essential social assistance services to continue and grant payment cycles remained unaffected. Acknowledges the efforts of SASSA officials and frontline personnel who continue to support vulnerable beneficiaries and provide emergency humanitarian relief under difficult circumstances, and recognizes that as adverse weather events become increasingly frequent, it is now more important than ever that disaster preparedness and relief plans include measures to ensure the continued payment of grants and uninterrupted access to social assistance services for vulnerable residents who depend on this support for their livelihood and dignity. I so move. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honourable Johnson.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes that Zayan Abdurrahman, a grade 11 learner from Mondale High School in Mitchells Plain, has been selected as one of only 8 South African learners to participate in the International Space Settlement Design Competition and visit the NASA's Kennedy Space Center in July 2026. Further notes that her selection followed participation in the South African Space Design Competition, which challenges learners to apply science, technology, engineering, and mathematics skills to real-world problems, and recognizes the importance of providing learners with opportunities to excel in STEM fields, fostering innovation, critical thinking, and future skills development in the Western Cape. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Johnson. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honourable Bryant.
Speaker, I hereby move that the House notes the City of Cape Town's ongoing winter readiness program. Yeah, which includes an investment of more than 85 million rand in critical flood mitigation projects across the metro. Further notes the work being undertaken to clear canals, rivers, and stormwater infrastructure, remove litter and invasive vegetation, and improve drainage systems ahead of the peak ahead of the peak winter rainfall season, and recognizes the importance of both infrastructure maintenance and responsible waste disposal in reducing flood risks, protecting communities, and improving environmental outcomes. I hereby move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Bryant. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. I now recognize the Honourable Mbombo. I recognize the Honourable Johnson.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes the ongoing admissions process for the 2027 academic year in the Western Cape, following the release of placement outcomes for on-time applications for Grade R, Grade 1 and Grade 8 learners. Further notes that parents and guardians have until 15 June 2026 to confirm placement offers, which will release thousands of additional school places for learners still awaiting placement, and acknowledges the importance of timely confirmations and constructive engagement to support the successful placement of every learner and uphold every child's right to basic education. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Johnson. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection. There's an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. Order, members. Order. There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. There's no need to debate it now. You'll have an opportunity to do so. Order, members. I recognize the Honourable Bryant. Order. Honourable members, you'll have an opportunity to debate these motions that you do not agree with. Honourable Bryant, my apologies, you may continue.
What's that?
Order.
Sorry.
Honourable Minister, there's a member on the floor.
Honourable member said he wants to go first.
Honourable Minister, order, members. Honourable members. Honourable Minister, that is not a point of order. Honourable Bryant, you may continue.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I hereby move that the House notes the grant funding awarded by the City of Cape Town to the Greater Tygerberg Partnership to support the restoration of the Elsies-Kraal River and the surrounding wetland areas in Elizabeth Park in Bellville. Further notes that the project will include the planting of indigenous vegetation, community clean-up initiatives, and environmental education programs aimed at improving water quality, and restoring biodiversity, and recognizes the value of partnerships between communities, civil society, and local government in protecting and rehabilitating urban waterways for the benefit of both current and future generations. I hereby move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Brian. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honourable Gainsu. Order, members.
Thank you.
Honourable members. Order.
Thank you very much.
Honourable member, before you continue, honourable members, there's a member on the floor. You do not need to debate the objection now. I've previously indicated you'll have an opportunity to debate it in the House during a full debate. Honourable Ngensu, my apologies, you may continue.
Thank you very much, Speaker. On behalf of the African National Congress, I move without notice that this House condemns, in the strongest terms possible, the continued targeting of Cuba and former President Raul Castro rose by the United States-led Western imperialist forces, whose objective has been to undermine Cuba's sovereign right to determine its own political, economic, and social system, denounces the United States-led economic blockade against Cuba, which for more than 6 decades has imposed severe hardships on the Cuban people, restricted the country's access to international markets, finance and essential goods, and constitute a violation of Cuba's sovereignty and right to self-determination. Notes that Raul Castro became a target of imperialist hostility because he refused to reverse the gains of Cuban revolution, refused to restore capitalism, and instead committed himself to maintaining, defending, and further perfecting the socialist project in Cuba. Recognizes that despite enduring economic sanctions, political pressure, and sustained efforts at regime change, the Cuban people have continued to defend their revolution and pursue a development path centered on social justice, equality, and human dignity. Acknowledges that Cuba's historic contributions to humanity through its internationalist programs in health, care, education, disaster relief, and solidarity with liberation movements and developing nations, including those on the African continent, reaffirms solidarity with the people of Cuba in their struggle against imperialist aggression, economic coercion, and external interference. Calls on this House, civil society organizations, and the broader public to provide material support to the people of Cuba, including donations of imperishable food items, medical supplies, and other essential goods as a practical expression of international solidarity. Notes that Cuba remains one of the few countries in the world where access to essential services such as healthcare and education is guaranteed as a social right rather than treated as a commodity for profit. Accordingly, this House pledges its unwavering solidarity with the people of Cuba, calls for the immediate and unconditional lifting of the economic blockade, and rejects all attempts to undermine Cuba's sovereignty, independence, and socialist development. I so move.
Thank you very much, honourable member. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Once they have elections, we can consider a motion like that. We object.
Honourable Walters, that is unparliamentary what you just did. I did not recognize you. I've put to the House.
Apologies, Honourable Speaker.
I've put to the House. Honourable members, I've put to the House the motion. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. Recognize the Honourable Ngensu.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I move without notice that the House condemns the reckless conduct of the chairperson of the National Assembly Portfolio Committee for Police, Honorable Ian Cameron, for his repeated habit of taking sensitive police and security matters into the public domain in a manner that risks undermining the operational effectiveness of law enforcement agencies.
Honourable Ngensu, the same as I've ruled with Honourable Masipa, that is not been submitted. The motion in that sequence, so I'm not going to allow that motion to continue. Honorable members, that brings us to the end of motions without notice. And that also concludes the business for the day. The secretary will now end the meeting and all members will be exited from the sitting. The House is adjourned.